And we are live. Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive. It is Monday, September 6th. Happy Labor Day, everybody. I am Josh Engelman, and I am joined by no one as of right now. We'll see if that changes as we keep moving, but that's fine. I know how to bring you guys the goods in a solo show. Shout out to Jock Market for being the presenting sponsor of this show. We've got a 7-game main slate today. Pretty easy to handle. I'm going to work our way through it very slowly, but before we do anything, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. 150 people already, 160 people already just waiting, ready to go. So hit that thumbs up. It helps us out a ton. Let's run that number pretty high. It is a holiday. I'm here for you guys on a holiday. I'm retweeting our tweet, making sure that gets out. Looks like we just got another lineup, which I was really hoping wasn't going to happen right out of the gate, but yet it did. Lots to talk about here. Yeah, Salty, you nailed it, man. Just like the old days, just Josh. Yes, we'll call this the baseball process show as we work our way through all 7 games. Anybody else that watched AEW last night? Exceptional. Pro wrestling is back, baby. It's going to be good stuff. Steven Leibowitz, I should bring Sean V on the stream. I don't want to put this company out of business with bad takes immediately, so we're going to go ahead and skip that one. Oh, man. Yeah, no, Josh would never have it. You're right, Sean. That would be something that would never happen. Do you realize how many people would have to lose their jobs at Awesemo for him to get in here? That'd be insane. I digress. We don't really have any. Oh, there we go. There's the Adam Cole, baby. Yeah, I love it. We got 7 games to talk about. We're going to have plenty of time. I'm going to be able to talk a little bit about chat. So we're going to have some fun. Nats lineup just came out. Maybe I could stall for a little bit. Grab that Nats lineup update, unless nothing changed. Thomas, Escobar, Soto, Bell, Hernandez. Okay, it's slightly different, which means I'm going to grab that again and rerun. It's easy. We got a ton to talk about. We've got an hour to do it before we turn this one over to Live Before Lock. So I am just going to dive in the moment that I start running this updated crunch. It should be a good one, because today's pitching slate is very interesting, loaded at the top, and then there's like 6 potential guys that you could roster today. It's kind of crazy for this Monday and for how small the slate is. So we're going to talk about all of it. What do we got coming into chat here? Oh, Larry, I didn't use the Bleacher Report app for AEW. I used the Fight TV one, and that worked flawlessly from start to finish. So no issues there. Oh, yeah. Link. Eric, you're like in a different country right now, aren't you? I woke up and it looked like a very nice picture that you posted to Twitter. So I'm a little jealous for that. But, you know, it is what it is. All right. Crunch is running. So let's get this one started. And again, we're almost at 100 likes. Although I was watching it now. It went from 93 to 92. So my apologies to whoever that was. That's not very nice. Here we go. Yankees and Blue Jays. 5-run implied total for the Yankees, 4.6 for the Blue Jays. I actually have this game dead neutral, 4.9 to 4.9. So we'll talk about that in a second. We've got Jameson Taillon going for the Yankees. We've got Hyunjin Ryu, who I can't say that name really easily. It's like my tongue doesn't move the right way. So we're just going to stick with Ryu for right now. Neither guy getting any ownership. Both guys at 1%. I don't disagree all that much. Taillon showed up in 3% of my lineups. Ryu showed up in 7%. It's a tough matchup. Yankees offense, Blue Jays offense, both highly above average. I've got the aggregate weighted runs created plus for the Yankees at 120. That means they are 20% better than average. The Blue Jays are at 14%. So with Taillon at 8,300, with Ryu at 8,600, it just doesn't feel like a spot where I want to get a lot more of these guys. But it's weird because they're sandwiched in between. They are the meat in a sandwich of a ton of ownership. Sonny Gray is at $9K, so $400 more expensive than Ryu. He's 43% owned. I can't advocate for 43-1 here. Like that's not what the gap should be. I have it at 25-7. So we're talking like 3-1, maybe something in that neighborhood. Same sort of story for Taillon. He's 8,300. He's projected for 1% ownership, but we've got Tariq Skubal at 39%. That gap shouldn't be there either. So in larger field GPPs, I understand the interest of wanting to go to either Taillon or Ryu because the ownership is just so concentrated elsewhere that you're getting leverage that just simply exists. And it's not like either one of these guys are bad. They're both, well, Taillon is up and down, but has some strikeout upside. Ryu is just a good pitcher, maybe not as much strikeout upside. There's certainly strikeouts in the Yankees lineup. So to me, these guys look like really nice GPP options given the current ownership that's around them. It's not gonna win all that frequently. It's a scary spot given the bats, but I really like it in larger field stuff. If you're in single entry contests, it's probably not going to be a necessity. You don't really need to take on all of that risk. But in terms of the larger field stuff, this is a spot I want to be. Now, I'm refreshing our top stacks tool because I want to make sure that I'm bouncing between the two. I have the Blue Jays as my number 3 stack. I have the Yankees, surprisingly. You don't see this every day. I have the Yankees as my number 8 stack. We have the Yankees 5th on the top stack tool. We have the Blue Jays 6th. So there's kind of a little bit of ambiguity between the tools and where I am right now. And I'm not entirely sure what's driving it. I do have the Blue Jays as a bit underowned. I do have the Yankees slightly underowned. We have the Yankees underowned in the top stack tool. Blue Jays a little bit less so. But the ownership of the Blue Jays, that's where I'm going to start since I have them ranked slightly higher. It's not like it's crazy. I mean, we're talking about a 7-game slate where George Springer's 15% owned in the leadoff spot. Like, I don't even think he's over-owned there. I'm happy to get to Marcus Semien. He's 13% owned. No one else is in double digits for the Jays. Now, I know Taillon is solid, but there's so much power in the Blue Jays lineup. This is a fantastic park for home runs. Right-handed park factor for New York, 106. Left-handed park factor in New York, 109. I mean, we're looking at 8 righties, which isn't the best balance in the world. But I see the Jays as a team that I want to target. Vlad Guerrero, 9% owned. Sign me up for more than that. Bo Bichette, 7% owned, $5,400 shortstop. Go for it. I think he should be owned twice as much as that. Kevin Smith in at 3rd at the flat minimum. It's not even hard to roster these Blue Jays. So I'm a little surprised to see that it's as low as it is. And shout out to Terry for tagging in. What's going on, man? I didn't know you were in here.
Hey, bud.
I looked to my left and there you were.
Yeah, I just I popped in here. I heard I was needed. So, yeah, here I am. What are we talking about? I'm just catching up.
I'm talking a little bit about how I like the Blue Jays today. They're my number 3 stack, number 4 in leverage. We don't have the same sort of story for them today in the top stack tool. We have them 6th overall, a little over-owned, but I think they're getting a little bit underrepresented here.
Yeah, I don't hate that spot. I mean, anytime we can take a good offense in Yankee Stadium going up against Taillon's been pitching okay this season, but he's around a league average pitcher at best. And I could argue that he's not a league average pitcher. So yeah, grabbing some of these high upside bats at least reasonable ownership and pretty good pricing, honestly, for some of these guys. Teoscar Hernandez at 4,300 seems like a mistake price on DK. Corey Dickerson going up against the righty. I don't have the confirmed lineup in here yet, actually. So if Dickerson's in there, he would be a good option. Let me pull that up. No
Blue Jays lineup yet anyway.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, let me jump over there anyway and make sure I get the ones that are released. But yeah, I think that's an upside spot. Obviously, a hitter's park going up against Taillon, who, like I said, league average guy, 4.59 xFIP on the season, 23.6% strikeout rate, 40.3% hard hit, 8.8% barrel rate. Certainly some home run upside, some run creation upside there for the Jays. Absolutely.
We have the Yankees slightly higher in the top stack tool and pretty significantly underowned. I agree that they're mildly underowned, but I don't have them as big of a stack because I think I respect Ryu more than I respect Taillon on the opposite side. That said, I still want to get to some Yankees because their power potential is on a different planet. So I have LeMahieu underowned, Judge underowned, Stanton under. I mean, Giancarlo Stanton is projected for 3.5% ownership. I don't care if he's 5,400. Like, that's just, especially against a lefty. Now, Ryu is a different story, but I want to buy a home run there if I can, especially in Yankee Stadium. So I'm happy to get to the Yankees as well. This is a really weird game. I like both offenses. I think that they're both mildly underowned. And I'm very interested in both pitchers on DraftKings because neither one of them is getting owned. And we have multiple guys at like 30 to 40%. So talk to me, I guess, a little bit about the Yankees. And if you have any interest in Tyon or Ryu as pitchers for today, feel free.
Yeah, I think it is at least an interesting spot for the pitchers, right? Just because of all that heavy ownership going to like the three obvious guys, Chris Sale on top of that, and then Tariq Skubal getting an inexplicable amount of ownership just based on the matchup and the price and everything. We'll get into that, or I don't know if you covered that already, but I wrote about him a little bit in my article that is half finished up on the site right now. But I was going to feature the Yankees. I was about to start writing this Yankee stack up in my featured spot where I go hitter by hitter and give everybody a little bit of a plug and some info on every hitter. And I had to cut that short. So this is that right now. I love this spot for the Yanks. They're pulling excellent home run marks in my model. They're pulling very, very strong projections for me. They're one of our top ranked teams on the top stacks tool, and they're getting positive leverage. And I think they're at relatively affordable prices for all of their talent too. You're talking about only Judge and Stanton over the 5K mark on DK, only those two over the 4K mark on the FanDuel slate. Joey Gallo for 4,700 and 3,500 in this matchup. Lefty-left. I don't care about lefty-lefty with Joey Gallo. He's a fantastic lefty-lefty option. Ton of power. He does everything that he does against lefties and righties equally. Like there's no reason not to go to Joey Gallo here. Same thing with Anthony Rizzo. Doesn't get any love lefty-lefty. There's really no reason to sweat it. Top to bottom, you can roster this lineup. If you want to leave out Brett Gardner and Gio Urshela, I have no problem with that. Urshela is a defensive player, has occasional pop, 157 ISO, 11 home runs on the season. Brett Gardner left all his talent in like 2018, but he's, there are options to roster in here. You can play them for cheap if you need like pricing offsets. But 1 through 7, I love this spot for the Yanks. And I do respect Ryu as a pitcher. He's a league average-ish pitcher at worst, but 40.4% hard hit, 7.9% barrel rate. That's targetable with this Yankees team.
Absolutely. I don't have anything else here. I talked pretty extensively about the pitchers and the Blue Jays before you hopped on. So if you have anything else you want to touch on for this game, go for it.
No, I think we can move on. I will have shares of both pitchers here, though. It's definitely an interesting spot, just given the ownership mark.
Agreed. All right. Nats and Mets, 4.4 run implied total for the Nats, 4.8 for the Mets. And if you watch the breakfast menu for today, you will know that I recommend taking under 9.5 for Nats Mets. That line has already moved to 9. So guess I know what's going on there. Either way, Pat Corbin, Trevor Williams going on the hill today. We've got Pat Corbin at 6% ownership. We've got Trevor Williams at 3%. I'm slightly higher on Corbin because he's 6,300. I see this trio at the bottom of Corbin, Steele, and Bryce Wilson all as very similar guys pay down wise. And I think that they're all slightly underowned. I don't love them, but I got Corbin we have Corbin at 6% owned. I think it should be more like 14. I have Steele at 9. It should be like 13. We have Bryce Wilson at 4. I think it should be like 10 to 12. So I like getting a little bit different at the bottom for pitching, but I don't want to go too crazy on Corbin because he's certainly not the same guy that he has been. For Trevor Williams at 6,900, I don't really care enough. Do you like either pitcher?
So I think if I was playing on the DK slate, the guy who I'm looking at in that 7K range is actually probably going to be Trevor Williams at 6,900 going up against this Nationals team. It's just a matter of wanting to throw arms at this Nationals team for the rest of the season. There's just nothing really in this lineup that worries me. So I think Williams has a little bit of upside here. It's mostly about the price and the total lack of ownership. If I can buy a $6,900 pitcher going up against this terrible lineup at 3% ownership, I'm happy to do that. Dude's not a great pitcher by any means. 22.2% strikeout rate with a 4.13 xFIP, a 1.42 WHIP, allows 6% barrel balls. That's decent. 39.4% hard hit is nothing special there. That's over 71 and 2/3 innings. But against the Nationals team, where the active roster has a 139 ISO, a 2.97% home run rate, creates runs 13% worse than average, has a 23.3% home run strikeout rate, that's like right in the middle of the league. There's enough upside for him there with nobody on him at that price that I think he's kind of a clear-cut SP2 for me on the DK slate. I would be well over the field on that spot. I agree with you on the other guys, though. It just kind of makes sense given the concentration around just a few very good options and then a board that just drops off the table somewhat equally around all these crappy options. It kind of just makes sense to spread out through some of the garbage here. I don't love the idea of getting to that much Corbin, though. He's just been really bad all season. So I don't love that. But yeah, if you wanted to go a little bit beyond the field, I wouldn't call you crazy.
We just got the Mets lineup. It's different than whatever the hell that I had in. And yeah, basically, I'm taking that excessive amount of ownership that's going to Scooble and just like scattering it a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, that's the one guy I don't really need to have any of. So I would happily take almost all of the shares of Scooble and just put them in other guys. So I want to boost Chris Sale up. I want to move some of the shares to the guys in the Yankees and Blue Jays game. Get to some Williams, and then get to some shares of Corbin, Wilson, Steele, the really really low end stuff.
So we have the Mets as the number 2 stack on DraftKings today. Pretty significantly over-owned. I actually have them 7th. I agree with the over-owned nature of it, including the fact that I have them dead last in leverage. Are you looking at the Mets differently? I'm going to rerun them now while I throw this to you since I got the new lineup, but I think this is like the easiest team for me to get away from. It's also probably still because of my overrating of Patrick Corbin.
Yeah, so they're coming up with decent home run marks, pretty decent projections for the top end of the lineup because of how bad Corbin's been through the year. We're talking about 141 innings in 26 starts, 18.5% strikeout rate, 4.39 xFIP, a 145 WHIP. Most concerningly, a 9.7% barrel ball rate with a 40.8% hard hit. He's just been really, really targetable for run creation, for power upside. The only problem with the Mets is they're cheap on both sites and they're getting significant ownership on both sites. So while I see decent upside here, I see the appeal of the multi-position eligibility for a lot of these guys. We talked these guys through the other day and they went off like crazy the other day and it was a great spot. But with all this ownership on them, I just want to be elsewhere. I'll take shares of some of these guys as one-offs. I'll take some Met stacks, but I think I'm going to be under the field on this spot, despite really liking going after Pat Corbin. If you've been going after Pat Corbin every time he's been out this year, you've made money. So it's a good spot, but too many people there.
So I have more interest in going to the Nats side of this game, which is kind of crazy to me. Juan Soto, I don't really think we need to say anything. Same probably for Josh Bell, but the rest of this team, outside of the 2 guys that are functional major league hitters, are to me under-owned for this spot. I have them pretty significantly under-owned. The top stack tool not totally agreeing with me. So I have them with an 8% chance of being the top stack. Our top stack tool has them at 5. So I'm a little bit higher here. I like getting to Yadiel Hernandez or Key Boom, both guys at like 2% ownership. I have them at like 6 or 7. So I think there's a little bit of space to get there. The only problem for me really is that Trevor Williams isn't picking up any ownership. So I don't think that there's as much utility in going to a Nats team.
Yeah. So, and that's the weird part of the situation, right? Like, I feel like Williams should be in that like 15% range, somewhere around there in this spot for that price. And he's just not finding that ownership. So you're really not attacking any of the field by getting to this terrible team. But I do agree with you that they've got some upside here. They're projecting out, like the competent hitters in the lineup anyway, are projecting out somewhat reasonably well. The power hitters are projecting out somewhat reasonably well for home run upside. So Soto, Bell, a little bit for Lane Thomas. He's got a 10.23 in my model. He was my pick from this team for the day. Yadiel Hernandez just under the 10, which is like the magic, above average chance number. Carter Kaboom pulling a decent one and not getting any kind of ownership for a cheap price. Yeah, I don't mind going to these guys. I don't want 25% shares of Nats, but if you're just doubling these field marks, it's easy enough.
Who's your favorite bat in this game?
Both sides.
I mean, Soto probably defaults as the answer, but like,
Soto, Alonso probably are my default easy answers on either side. I'll pull out Michael Conforto. I just think hitting third, he's been bad all season. 220, 341, 374, 154 ISO. He's still creating runs 4% better than average, 11 home runs. Maybe creeping up to a little bit of competence lately. And he looks like the most under-owned, underappreciated bat in that Mets lineup. And he's not expensive. So if I get shares of Michael Conforto one-offs, despite I don't care about a lefty against Pat Corbin here. I don't expect much Pat Corbin in this game, really. So I'll take Conforto there.
Okay. VR is the guy that pops up the most for the Mets in my sim. Second base, third base eligibility, 4,100 leadoff. That generally gets it done. Actually, my crunch is done with whatever the hell this Mets lineup is. So,
and VR again, we talked about it the other day. Just the idea of being able to roster him at 3 positions on FanDuel for 2,900 is just bananas. You can do so much with this Mets team. 3 guys with multi-position eligibility, all under 3,000. Or excuse me, no, Baez 3,400, which is too cheap for Javi Baez. So, yeah, you can put these Mets together in interesting ways because of that.
By the way, for those asking about Ship My Money, I do want to put this out there right now. I have paid him. Shohei Ohtani outscored Luis Castillo. I think it was Luis Castillo. I can't even remember now. Whatever the bet was, we made for $100. I have already paid Adam, so that one's set in stone.
So nobody's ducking anybody for that reason.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know I paid him. Didn't make me happy
He took all that cash. That's where he is. He's out celebrating. Big win.
Yeah, I paid his bar tab. Do you got anything else here for this matchup, Nats and Mets?
Nah, I think we covered this one pretty well.
Alrighty, schedule for the rest of the day. We got a lot of stuff going on for Labor Day. MLB Live Before Lock coming up immediately after this at noon. Greg and Eric taking you through today's MLB slate. Then 2 p.m. on the Fantasy Football channel, we have the Awesemo Fantasy Football Show because week 1 of the NFL is upon us. We are going to be deep in the NFL coverage starting now. Eitan, Laffy, and Ben talking some NFL. And then 4 p.m., the Yahoo Live NFL Show with Laffy and Eric breaking down some Yahoo specific salaries. I've got contenders coming soon for Thursday night's opener for Showdown. And then we'll have my top 5 videos on Friday at some point in time. Top 5s at each position, FanDuel and DraftKings. It's going to be a big one. Lots of NFL stuff to come. All right. Got another one we got to get to. This one is wild. Orioles and Royals. I want to make sure that I have this pulled up correctly. 5.3 run implied total on both sides. Zach Lowther and Chris Bubich is what I have in here for starters. No real ownership going to either guy. Bubich got to 2% on DraftKings at 6,500. I think you can make a case it should be slightly higher than that, but I don't really want to advocate too strongly for pitching in this matchup.
No, yeah, I don't really want to push either one of these pitchers. If anybody wants to grab one just for low ownership, low cost basis against two, mid-range type lineups, neither one of these lineups is spectacular. Neither one of these lineups is overly bad, and both are getting popularity. It's just you're going to two really atrocious pitchers who are very, very targetable for a lot. So for me, it's kind of a stay away. I don't need to push them on anybody. I'm much more about the bats here.
Well, let's talk about those bats because we have the Kansas City Royals at the top of our top stack tool, 14.7. Let me hit refresh just in case. 14.6% chance of being the top stack. I have it at 11.5. So I am a bit lower on the Royals in this spot than we are. But either way, we've got them as the biggest negative leverage spot on the slate. I have it as the second biggest behind the Mets. But either way, Salvador Perez at 36% ownership as the 6K catcher, driving that one pretty big right now. Do I want to get to Royals bats? Absolutely. Are they a priority for me in terms of 5-man stacks given their ownership for today? No, they are not. What are you doing with Kansas City?
So I do want to get to them. I'll probably be under where the field is. I agree with you. They should be a couple notches down from where we've got them probably. For one, though, at Alberto Mondesi in the lineup here, so that's a ding against them. But yeah, the top end of the lineup, I do like the lineup here, and I do think that since most of the ownership is concentrated around Whit Merrifield, Sal Perez, and a little bit of Edward Olivares, I think you can still build at least a couple stacks where you're grabbing one or two of those guys, adding in Nicky Lopez and all his quality, Carlos Santana, Andrew Benintendi. Some of these guys are lower owned than they should be. So I think there's a couple ways to put this stack together where you can get away with using them despite some of the heavy ownership. And then I definitely want to draw some one-offs from this spot. So just grabbing some one-offs of any of those guys that I just mentioned. Edward Olivares is interesting because he's the dead minimum on the FanDuel slate, 3,000 on the DraftKings slate. He's pulling a lot of ownership, but anybody hitting third at dead minimum in this lineup, in this kind of a spot, in this ballpark, I'll take some shares of even with that heavy ownership. So 1 through 6 in different combinations I can handle here. If you want to stick Michael Taylor on the back end of that for his, weird outbursts of power and speed from, that are totally unpredictable, you can do that. Hanser Alberto and Hunter Dozier, not quite as much, although Dozier's got a little bit of sneaky pop from time to time. And then I think the Orioles on the other side are somewhat interesting, but they're pulling ownership too.
Yeah, likewise. So I have them 4th. That matches our top stack tool. I have them at a 9.1% chance of being the top stack. We have it at 9.4. So I'm in lockstep here. And I do think that they are also mildly overowned against Chris Bubich. I think Bubich is about average. So I have the Orioles 11th in leverage. That's not great. You want to be at the top, not the bottom. But I do like some of these individual bats. Austin Hayes, in particular, at 3,300, hitting third potentially. Ramon Urias at 3,200, third base and shortstop eligibility. These guys are pulling some ownership. There's a lot here. I see a lot of cash game plays in this Orioles-Royals game. I don't know how much I want to focus on getting to 5-mans. I would rather redistribute my 5-man ownership to some other spots. But this is not, I don't want to get away from these guys, but they're likely going to be in 3-mans, 2-mans, individual one-offs.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty solid way to approach them. You've got some guys like you just mentioned going through the lineup here who are either getting a little bit of a price discount, maybe a little bit of an ownership discount in some spots. A guy who's interesting toward the back end of the lineup, Anthony Santander, if he's in there, 3,800 on the DK slate, 3,400 on the FanDuel slate. The issue with him, switch hitter, going out as a righty against a lefty, he loses a lot of his power in that side of the split. Against righties as a lefty hitter, he's a much better power hitter. So we get a question mark around him, but with nobody on him, against Chris Bubich, I can justify getting to more than the field of him. I just believe in the hitter. I think he's an interesting enough power bat, an interesting enough hitter that despite the downturn against left-handed pitching, I think he's somewhat interesting. So if you're going to that part of the lineup, I don't mind Santander with no ownership on him. Yeah. Jorge Mateo, with all his speed, is interesting as a wraparound from the bottom of the lineup. Still needs to get on base more to be able to actually utilize that speed. And I think he's drawing a little bit too much ownership on the DK slate to actually get away with that at 2,400. He's 2,600 and untouched on the FanDuel slate. I don't know if we need to go to it, but it's at least there on the blue side.
I know you posted the screenshot earlier. I did not realize that I had been continuing to have 2 of Francisco Mejia in my projections, which was creating the Rays looking like a great stack. And then I saw that Francisco Mejia was projected. I had him at like 34% ownership. I was like, that feels off. Well, because he's getting added together and projected like he's basically a pitcher. So he's getting credit for 2 separate lineup spots. Yeah, so I'm rerunning everything now because it was just super duper. Like I looked at it, I was like, I've got the Rays as like positive 12% leverage right now. No part of this makes sense. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Oh, there's the Phillies lineup too, by the way.
Oh, nice. Let me grab that while we're looking at this. While you're
running, I'm going to do the same thing. Yeah, this is just a game where offense looks great and defense or pitching is, I don't know, less great. Would that be the way you describe Zach Lowther? I think I got his name right.
Yeah, as less great. Yeah, I think less great, significantly less great than the average probably would be a pretty good way to describe that. And yeah, anytime you're talking about this ballpark, I just really don't want to go to anything but premium pitchers in this ballpark anyway. It just plays well for offense, and yeah, it's just not a good spot with these 2 guys.
All right, I am going to click start on this crunch, and then I am going to tell you guys a little bit about a promo code, because that's really easy to do for me while I run my crunches. So WR is the promo code. We're not there yet, folks. The season is fast approaching, but I think this is still a fantastic value if you haven't done any drafts or if you're still looking to cram in a bunch of best ball drafts before the season starts on Thursday. You can get our Awesemo Fantasy Football Draft Kit for season long and best ball using that promo code WR. You get the Draft Wingman tool, which is as valuable of a tool you will find on the awesemo.com website in order to run your drafts. It does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Best ball rankings and stacking guide, trade value chart, and more. You get up to a $35 credit for underdog and FFPC leagues. So you're getting 33% off our draft kit using this promo code. It's going to be less than $10 for everything that we have to offer for season long and best ball. Don't sleep on it. You're going to want to use it. There are still plenty of quality best ball contests for you to get in. Or if you're just one of those people that do a very late season long draft, you wait until everything is ready, even better, because the Draft Wingman tool can help you out tremendously. Don't sleep on it. Go get it now. Now, let's talk Red Sox and Rays. You know what? I got pretty close to this finishing off, so that's good. 5-run implied total for the Red Sox, 4.3 for the Rays. Chris Sale and Ryan Yarbrough. Sale 9,900, projected for 16% ownership. I had 18, so I don't really have much to add. He's 10-7 on FanDuel. A little bit of a tougher sell, but nothing too crazy. But the fact that he is the most expensive pitcher on the slate does make it a little bit easier to go to Woodruff and Wheeler. Yarbrough on the other side, not picking up any ownership. I don't think that he should. I did bet the Red Sox minus a run and a half. So spoiler alert to the breakfast menu. You guys should still watch it either way. But I did bet on the Red Sox. Talk to me here a little bit about Chris Sale. How are you feeling about him?
I think he's a really interesting pitcher on this slate. I think he's fairly priced at worst on the DK slate at 9,900. Getting him at 10.7 is a little uncomfortable maybe on the FanDuel slate, but you're getting him at 6% ownership. He came back from the injury, and this is still Chris Sale. This is still the guy who was a 30-ish% strikeout rate pitcher over the last handful of years. He dropped to 27.9% after his last game against this same Rays team last week, where he went 5 and change, or maybe it was 6, and only struck out 3 hitters, only gave up 2 runs, gave up a homer, but got through the game fairly clean. It just wasn't a massive strikeout upside game, but still at 27.9% strikeout rate over the 21 and a third innings since coming back, 3.28 xFIP, 14.6% induced swinging strike rate with a 31.6% CSW, only has allowed 3.7% barrel so far, 33.3% hard hit. There's nothing not to like about Chris Sale here. I think you're getting a discount on a guy who is still probably, when he's whole, one of the best pitchers in baseball, one of the best lefties in baseball, going up against the Tampa team that is much better against right-handed pitching. They still create runs 8% better than average against lefties, so they're still competent, but they strike out 24.1% of the time against lefties. That's 6th worst in baseball. They've got a 3.75% home run rate and a 170 ISO. Both of those are like right in the middle of the league. So they're average for power in the split, and they strike out a lot in the split. So I think there's actually sneaky upside for Chris Sale here. He stuck out to me as being significantly under-owned and a spot that I want to attack on this slate.
Happy to get him. I actually, now that I've rerun everything, I've got him up to 26% at 16% ownership. So I think that he is being pretty dramatically underrepresented as well. Team Chris Sale for today. And if I'm being perfectly honest, Team Boston Bats. They are my number 3 stack. They are my number 1 leverage stack. We have them a little bit lower, but we do have them as a positive stack in general. Taylor Motter in the leadoff spot at 2,100 dual eligibility should be significantly more owned. Looks like a really, really good cash option if you need it. Schwarber, to me, massively underowned. I'll happily go to Renfroe or JD Martinez or Devers anywhere. I love getting to Boston. I love the righty bats. I don't mind going to the lefty bats. I'm just not worried about Ryan Yarbrough. He doesn't miss enough bats. I don't think he's all that great of a pitcher. This is a really nice spot for Boston.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a guy who's going to allow a lot of contact, a lot of bat on ball against the team who's particularly good at hitting the ball really hard and barreling the baseball when they do make contact. Leaving Motter off the top from Schwarber through Dahlbeck, so through 2 through 6, average barrel rate 15.6%. That's absurd. Average hard hit rate 48.1%. That's nuts. Average ISO for those guys 254. Do I need to go on? I mean, this is a major, major spot for power, the 2 through 6 in that lineup. You can tack on Alex Verdugo despite the lefty-lefty. You can go to Motter up top at the super cheap price on both sites. He should absolutely be drawing more ownership. I love the multi-position on him over on DK as well there. So, yeah, this is a great spot for the Red Sox bats. Yarbs, 18.7% strikeout rate, a 4.50 xFIP. He doesn't walk that many guys, so he saves himself from getting into a ton of trouble. If his walk rate was higher, he would be an atrociously bad pitcher. He would be really targetable. But I think he's definitely, with these Red Sox, targetable enough here. The one thing he does well is limit the hard hit rate, 26.1% hard hit, despite allowing 7.3% barrels and allowing that much contact. So that is good. But he comes with a 17.8 degree average launch angle. Playing in this park against this team, they're going to be home runs. I just feel them coming.
We have the Rays as a massive positive leverage stack, highest on the slate. I'm a little bit lower here against Chris Sale. I'm not really trying to target Rays bats. Like, there are obviously individuals. I'll take Nelson Cruz all day as a one-off here, and it's not really much of an issue. But I don't like the Rays nearly as much as the top stack tool is showing that maybe I should. I'm much more of a believer in Chris Sale.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I mentioned the Rays in the half an article that I got up on the site, but it was mostly based on where we've got them in the top stacks tool and what the ownership is looking like. I just went through the numbers of how they suffer a little bit for power, for quality against lefties. That said, they still do have that 8% above average run creation mark. It's just that Chris Sale, it's tough to believe in the idea of getting a bunch of guys on base and creating runs, manufacturing runs against Chris Sale rather than hitting for power. You might get a couple one-off spots where a couple guys are able to take him deep, and that would be around the righties like Randy Arozarena, Nelson Cruz. I can take some shares of Wander Franco here. The other issue is it's not the greatest version of this lineup. Yandy Diaz hitting cleanup, Jordan Luplow, Manny Margot. Manny's fine, but I mean, he's not a major upside play. 10 home runs, 11 stolen bases on the season. Productive for DFS purposes when you need him, but not a great option. And then Austin Meadows, who suffers dramatically lefty at the back end of the lineup, and then Francisco Mejia 2 times. So yeah, it's an interesting little lineup, but I agree with you. I would much rather have loaded up shares of Chris Sale and leave the Rays behind. And if they burn me, they burn me.
All right. Then we're on the same page there. I don't have anything else for Boston and Tampa Bay. To me, Boston is the team you want to roster the most for right now. Maybe the Blue Jays. Very close between the two.
I like those calls.
Awesome. Well, let's keep it going. Pirates and Tigers. This one will have something to talk about, that's for sure. 3.9 run implied total for Pittsburgh, 4.6 for the Tigers. Bryce Wilson and Tariq Skubal. Wilson getting 3% ownership. I actually think that should be quite a bit higher. I have him at 12%. I don't think that he's anything special, but this Tigers offense is dreadful, and it's the best strikeout matchup on the slate. Meanwhile, Tariq Skubal pulling 38% ownership right now against an equally terrible Pittsburgh offense. I have Skubal at 15%. That feels way more reasonable to me, given this spot. If I look at our top pitchers tool for right now, I'm probably going to get corrected. Skubal 4th in the top pitchers tool, 23.8% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, decent value, but showing up a little bit overowned. I don't want Tariq Skubal in 4 out of every 10 lineups that I played today.
No, and it's about the spot, right? It's a great spot going up against this Pirates team. They're a bad baseball team. We know that. But with that much of the field there, I don't trust Tariq Skubal as far as I can throw him right now. The Pirates team that he's going up against is decent at avoiding the strikeouts. It's the one thing they do well, 22.7% rate against left-handed pitching. That puts them 14th in baseball. So they're around the middle of the league, 13th in baseball, excuse me. So they're around the middle of the league, but it's a pretty good mark, 22.7%. That's not terrible. Everything else, they're bad. 140 team ISO, 2.54% home run rate. They create runs 22% worse than average in the split. There is major reason to believe in a left-handed pitcher going up against this Pirates team. My issue with Tariq Skubal with that much ownership on him, he's got a very nice 26.4% strikeout rate over 133 innings this year, but he's got a 7.9% walk rate, a 1.29 whip. There are too many guys on base. He doesn't throw enough strikes with a 27.5% CSW, and he allows a ton of contact, a lot of premium contact here, 13.6% barrel rate. That's really high. 45% hard hit rate, really high. 90.8 mile an hour average exit velo with a 15.5 degree average launch angle. That's significant home run trajectory. He's going up against a team that does not hit home runs well, but there's a few guys in here who can do enough damage between Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, and Yoshi Tsutsugo. One of those 3 guys could easily take him deep here, put a 3-run homer on him, and just ruin 40% of the field's day, because he's going to need every bit of upside here. So I don't see it. I want to be way under the field if I have any shares of him at all. I don't see the spot for Tariq Skubal here at all. He could come out and put up a very nice day, but yeah, I won't be there.
Yeah, like I said, I would get like 15 to 20%, which is close to half. I think that's pretty reasonable given this slate. But that's obviously the biggest negative stand that I'm going to take from a pitching perspective on this entire slate.
Yeah,
which opens you up to, how do you feel about Pittsburgh bats against the Skubal ownership? They're not particularly good. They're 4th from the bottom in top stack odds, a little bit overowned. A lot of that is just Brian Hayes pulling a ton of ownership in the leadoff spot. They're so cheap, it's insane, but I don't mind stacking them just because of the Skubal ownership.
Yeah, I would throw them at the Skubal ownership a little bit on the DK slate where he's like 40% owned. FanDuel, I'm a little bit maybe less inclined to do it because some of the hitters that I want to get to, like Brian Hayes, Brian Reynolds, pulling in significant ownership over there, 20+% on Brian Hayes, over 10% on Brian Reynolds. Taking those 2 guys out with popularity is kind of going to put a big ding into stacking ability here. But on DK, you can do it. Those 2 guys are a little bit lower owned, and then you can get Tsutsugo at no ownership down toward the bottom there. Kevin Newman not drawing very much if you want to go to a 5-man. You can go to Colin Moran despite a lefty here, just given the contact profile. So I think it's okay. It's not my favorite in the world. Just I don't love the idea of stacking bad teams. But if you're going up against the guy who gives up this much quality contact, it makes sense with that much ownership on him. Just as a tournament play, as a game theory kind of a play, it makes a lot of sense to go to that and at least get a little bit over the field, which isn't all that difficult to do at price and at ownership points. So I like it. I see it more as a game where, like I said before, though, somebody will take him deep for like a 3-run home run. He'll it'll be like a 5-3 Tigers win or something like that. Just insignificant on all sides. It just feels like that kind of game.
By the way, everybody, 211 likes, 750 people here on a Labor Day. It looks like some people have some free time this morning. No work. So hit that thumbs up. Let's shoot for 300. Let's go for something pretty big here. Why not?
300 like Labor Day. I love it. Yeah, come on, guys. I didn't even know I was going to be. I'm not even supposed to be here today, to quote Clerks.
In a row?
Such a good one. Man.
I don't have anything really to say about Tigers bats. They're 5th in the top stack tool, showing up as slightly overowned. I have them 10th. I'm not all that interested in getting to them. They're just sort of on the slate. I don't have anything really to add.
Yeah, sort of on the slate is a fair way to put it. I think I'll be well below the field, particularly looking at the FanDuel ownership numbers. I don't need anywhere near this much Tigers in my life. I'll take what I get. I don't think all that much of Bryce Wilson as a pitcher. He's targetable, negative 2.5 in my BBB minus K metric, 15.3% strikeout rate, 10.7% barrels, 7.1% walks is all we really need to know there. So he's targetable, but I agree with you that just in general for the 5,600, he's probably under-owned just for the fact that he's going up against this awful Tigers lineup that's second worst in the league in strikeout rate against right-handed pitching. Plenty of upside for him there for the total lack of ownership and total lack of salary. So I agree. I would want a little bit more Bryce Wilson and a lot less Tigers offense.
All righty. We still have 2 more games to go, but I would be a bad person if I didn't at least mention a little bit about Jock Market, the presenting sponsor of this show. And they are adding features left and right as of late that I find very interesting. But if you haven't heard about Jock Market, they've turned fantasy sports into a stock exchange. So you can buy and sell shares of players throughout the game. And if you want to just cash out of your shares immediately after lock, like let's say you've got shares of player X, he's the leadoff hitter and he goes yard right out of the gate. First pitch, Tater, he moves up. You could sell your shares immediately, lock in that profit and get out of there if you want. Or you can wait till the end of the game to make some more money. But you're doing this all in real time from your phone. You can do it on your couch, whether it's NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA. You can make real money every hour, minute, second of any match or game. You buy all these guys in the pregame IPO section. That's where you pick up all of your shares, and then you can buy, sell, or hold during the game. You can also short players now, which is so awesome. You can bet against their positive performance. That makes me, the inner curmudgeon, very happy on a day-to-day basis. So use the promo code Awesemo, get up to $50 of an instant match deposit bonus. So if you deposit 50, you'll get 50. Pretty dope. This offer is exclusive to Awesemo people only. So you're hearing me now. Go sign up at Jock Market. Use that promo code Awesemo. Very interesting mechanism for fantasy. You're going to be hearing a lot about Jock Market in the near future.
For sure.
Brewers and Phillies. Looks like I did rerun this after that Pirates lineup came out. So we're still waiting on Brewers, Orioles, and Blue Jays. The Blue Jays one kind of scares me a little bit, but neither here nor there. So let me grab this updated run, and then we could talk about a game that I don't really want to talk about other than the pitching side, obviously.
Yeah, this one's all about the pitching here.
Yeah, don't get the sense we're going to be getting a lot of bats. So 3.8 run implied total for the Brewers, 3.3 for the Phillies. Brandon Woodruff and Zach Wheeler. We have Woodruff at 9,600 on DraftKings, projected for 41% ownership. We have Wheeler at 10,100, projected for, we'll call it 30% ownership. I have both of these guys basically on their number. Woodruff off by 1%, Wheeler off by 3%. I think these guys are very clearly fantastic options. I think both of these guys are very clearly the 2 best pitching options on the slate. I don't really have much else to add. They're both really good. I don't see anything else that I could possibly say.
Agreed. I can go a little further.
Go for it. We got time.
I was just going to leave it there. But yeah, I think they're both spectacular options. I wouldn't be shocked to see both of these guys hit the quality start bonus on FanDuel. They're both among the league leaders in quality starts. Woodruff, I believe, has pull it back up here. Woodruff has 18. Wheeler has 16. So among the quality starts leaders on the board, among the innings pitched leaders, particularly Wheeler, just goes deep into every game, 182 and 2/3 innings and 27 starts. Woodruff on the other side, 157 and a third and 26 starts. 30% strikeout rate for Woodruff, 28.6% for Wheeler. Neither one walks anybody, 5.5% walk rate for Wheeler, 6.5% on the other side. Excellent xFIPS, 290 for Wheeler, 304 for Woodruff. There's nothing not to like here. These guys pitch very, very similarly too. 5.1% barrel rate for Wheeler, 5.4 for Woodruff, 29.7% hard hit for Wheeler, 29.8% on the other side. These guys are the same guy. You can play the pricing and ownership game between the two of them, but I want massive shares of both of them. I expect both guys to shut down the average teams that they're facing on the other side. That's the other part of the story. Both of these teams are very, very average against right-handed pitching. So you've got them both in pretty good spots. The win is up in the air based on, neither one of them might get it. One of them might get it, but that might be the difference between these two starters. I see a great start from both of these guys today.
Yep. Agreed. They're just both fantastic. Yep. And you know what I don't want? Brewer stacks or Phillies stacks today. We have Milwaukee and Philly as the dead last and third from the bottom. I have this team, both of these teams. I have the Brewers second worst. I have the Phillies as the worst option for the day. I can't really advocate for it. Like, there's a path, obviously, because of the heavy ownership, but I just don't care. Woodruff and Wheeler are both really, really good. I don't like being on the opposite side of ownership when the pitcher is talented. I don't mind it if it's, oh, this guy's 6K and he's owned properly. It's like, oh, well, that's fine, but he's also, there's a reason he's 6K. These guys are expensive. They're really good. They're still getting ownership. I'm not rostering Brewers or Phillies.
Yeah, the kind of guy we want to attack in that situation is a guy like Terry Skubal, where there's that ridiculous contact profile to target. Even though he's got strikeout ability, you can point to something at least and say, all right, this is a good reason to attack this guy. I just read through the numbers on both of these guys. They're both phenomenal. There's no reason to go to bats here. If you wanted to grab a handful of shares of stacks, I mean, it's not totally crazy to do just given that there's nobody on either of these teams. But like I said, they're both a little bit overrated against right-handed pitching, very much league average-ish. If I was to do it, I think that it would be, even though I like the Phillies offense a little bit better, I think I would do it with the Brewers just on the idea of if we do happen to get into a bullpen, I think the Phillies bullpen is worse than the Brewers bullpen. So maybe you get a little bit of upside there. That said, I don't expect Avi Garcia in this one. He's been out the last few with a back issue. So you might lose one of their better hitters out of that lineup. Just another ding against them. Just a really tough spot to go to these teams. All the power is sapped out of them in my home run model by the upside of the pitchers. Nothing to see here on the offensive.
I'm with you. 268 likes. We're going to be dangerously close to 300 when we get out of here. So if you still haven't hit it again. Let's close this out with, and we'll talk about summary stacks and pitchers after this one. We could take some questions, give some dong picks. We got some time.
I want to find out where Larry C in the chat lives, because he said that they're filming Clerks 3 right by his house. And that, for me, that means that Larry C lives around near where I grew up in Middletown, New Jersey.
Yeah, I was going to say they must be somewhere Jersey-ish area, I would assume. I think I saw the plot for that one. Either way, I'll watch it one way or the other.
Absolutely.
I don't miss anything in that universe.
Yeah, I'm a big Kevin Smith fan. I don't know if you ever listen to like his podcasts or anything. And I know that he puts out like schlocky garbage movies a lot of the time, but he's just a fun guy. And the thing I like about him best is he's just so supportive of people. Like he's just encourages people to like go chase their dreams and shit. And like, I'm a dumbass from Jersey and I did it, so you can do it. That's just a good attitude. Anyway, haven't
listened to too much of the podcast. I listen to him when he's on like Rogan and stuff or any other podcast, but just no time. It's so much sports podcast at this point, but yeah, I mean, I loved Clerks. No-brainer.
Clerks is great. Yep. Dogma, I think, is a brilliant movie.
Yeah, I greatly enjoyed Clerks 2. No problems there.
Mallrats is always fun.
I could watch. That movie gets slept on so much. People don't even realize that Ben Affleck is incredible in that movie. He's just a complete dick. Oh my God.
What, like the backseat of a Volkswagen?
I can't even explain to you how bad I wanted to just walk around malls with like a very tiny amount of soda in a small cup.
In the paper cup.
Yeah. It's just preposterous. Absolutely preposterous.
Jason Lee was a hero in New Jersey for quite a while, just based on those movies.
We playing Sega after being with Shannon Doherty.
The opportunity to
Hartford
take the to the cup.
The whale. Oh man, I can't even count how many times I've seen that movie. Oh god, I could probably recite it for a pretty long time. Justin Steele
Absolutely.
going for the Cubs. Sonny Gray going for the Reds. The Reds are pretty sizable favorites here. 4.6 run implied total for Cincinnati. 3.8 on the Cubs. We've got Justin Steele at 18% ownership. I think that's a little high. That number appears to have gone up significantly since I read these numbers off earlier during the show. So I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction from Steele. Still like to have a little bit at 6K, but Sonny Gray, this is the one we need to talk about. 40% owned on DraftKings right now. I got him at 25%. And look, the Cubs team stinks. There are some strikeouts here, but it's really hard for me to look at this and think that I want to go to Sonny Gray before I go to Zach Wheeler. I just think that Wheeler is the better option, particularly with 10% less ownership. So let's start here with Sonny Gray. Where do you rank him in relationship to the rest of these guys?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. He comes up in terms of my projections. He's right there with these other guys based on this matchup. I think it's a phenomenal spot for him, but I just believe in the other guys. I think they're more talented pitchers. Sonny's a bit more of a roller coaster. He's a bit more targetable in terms of where his numbers are. 108 and 2/3, 27.4% strikeout rate, 3.60 xFIP, a 1.25 whip. He walks 8.9%. He's good with contact, only a 4.2% barrel rate, 31.3% hard hit. So when he puts guys on base, it's difficult to bring them around. It keeps the numbers down for him. This is a terrible, terrible Cubs lineup. They're worst in baseball against right-handed pitching for strikeout rate at 26.2%. They have a 3.54% home run rate and a 155 ISO that are at best average. Create runs 13% worse than average in the split. It's a bad, bad baseball team. But just if we're going to be walking hand in hand with that much of the field, I'd rather do it on the pitchers that I believe in more, who are in at least somewhat similar type matchups. I don't think that the Brewers and the Phillies are that much better than these Cubs. They're better baseball teams. Don't get me wrong. They've got much better players in a couple spots. But in terms of the aggregate, they're not that much better. And the delta between those guys and Sonny, I think, makes up for most of it. So, yeah, I'm happy to just get away from the ownership. I'm happy to pay up for Zach Wheeler on the FanDuel slate where he wasn't getting much attention. I think it makes sense.
Perfect. That is what I like to hear. What do you want to do with Justin Steele pulling a ton of ownership, though?
Yeah, that if he jumped from that 8.8 that he was at earlier up into the 18% range, I think we can just go to some of the other low-owned cheap guys on that slate for DK. We talked about Trevor Williams being in the similar-ish price range, and then there's a few other just super cheap guys. So, yeah, it kind of takes him off the board there. Don't need him at all on FanDuel, obviously.
No, I'm very much not interested in him if he's already at 18% ownership, because it's not like – I mean, he's fine. He's fine. It's a decent spot. I don't really have much else to add there with regards to Steele, though. Not the direction I want to go. Nor are the bats in this game, although they're certainly not owned all that much. I have the Cubs 12th overall. I have the Reds 9th. Are you seeing anything that I'm not? Are you more interested in the offense?
Let me actually just I didn't grab the Reds lineup, so let me just drop that in as I'm talking about it. I think given that the Reds are a little bit underowned, there's a few right-handed hitters in that lineup that I'm at least interested in. Let me make sure they're actually in the lineup as I'm talking about them here. Yeah, so like Eugenio Suarez is back in the lineup. He's basically been platooning these days, but against the lefty, he'll be back in the lineup hitting cleanup. Significant home run upside despite his 175, 263, 384 triple slash. Still a 209 ISO, 25 home runs on the season. Barrels the ball 14.3% of the time. I can get to some Eugenio Suarez. I can get some Aristides Aquino down the bottom of the lineup, 16.3% barrel rate with a 41.9% hard hit for him on the season. Significant strikeouts in both of those guys, 35.8% for Aquino, 30.5% for Suarez. So you're potentially baking some zeros into your lineup. There's also double dong potential in both of those guys. Nick Castellanos, a bit more expensive, a bit more obvious, but also lower owned. Very, very interesting in this spot. You can even go to like Jonathan India, Tyler Stevenson, if you wanted to stack these guys from top to bottom. Apparently Asdrubal Cabrera's on this team now. I didn't even notice that, but sticking him in the middle of the lineup, I don't hate that. Kyle Farmer's struggled through August. This is an entirely right-handed lineup now. Even Delino DeShields actually stuck on this team now also. A lot of speed for Delino DeShields. I don't expect him to be on base at all, but there's a lot of speed there. So, yeah, the Reds are at least interesting with nobody on them.
I don't have anything else for this entire slate, Cubs and Reds. Do we want to hit on who our top stacks are for today?
Yeah, I think we can take a look at that.
All righty. Go for it.
All right.
Or do you want me to go? I'm grabbing the most recent updated of ownership. We got it 7 minutes ago. So I want to make sure. You know what? I'll hit you with mine first. I'll lead this bad boy off.
Fair enough.
Top of my top stack tool is the Royals, but I do think that they are a bit over-owned. I will happily fill out lineups with the Royals, but I don't want to go to them all that frequently with 5-mans. I think they're over-owned. So the teams I'm looking at most are the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. I have them at basically the exact same top stack odds. We'll call it 11%. I think the Blue Jays are slightly. I think the Red Sox are a better leverage option than the Jays, but I think they're both under-owned. So I really like Toronto and I really like Boston. The Mets are going to be a very, very tough sell for me on this particular slate. I think that they're pulling way too much ownership. They are my biggest negative leverage stack, and it is not even close. So play the Blue Jays, play the Red Sox, avoid the Mets.
Yeah, I like that. I will absolutely throw my Yankees into the mix there, just given the leverage marks and just all the power upside in that team in the ballpark. So I think getting to some Yankees there where they're a little bit under-owned, it's catching up. It might be around even, might even trend slightly negative toward lock. But I think there's enough upside, even if they end up at like, a -1, -2 in the leverage column, you'll be fine there. I agree. Totally difficult to get to the Mets. They're just way too popular, way too owned. If you're taking some one-offs out of some of the guys we talked about, that's fine. We talked about Tampa a little bit, their struggles against lefties, the idea that they're going up against Chris Sale, but just with the idea of the talent at the top end of that lineup and that they're going so positively leveraged, I think they're at least interesting and worth bringing up again from the middle of the board. And then I just talked through the Reds. I think given that they're also positively leveraged, they rank out similarly. This is one of those days where the top end, the second ranked team anyway, the KC's pulling away a little bit, but that's the second ranked team down to the like 8th ranked team is only a difference of 5 percentage points in terms of being the probability of being the top stack on the FanDuel slate. So a team like Cincinnati being at a 7 with positive leverage when the Mets are at a 10.8 with negative leverage, I think makes the Reds somewhat interesting there too.
I'm with you there. I would be remiss if I didn't say that I think people should look at the Nats a little bit. I think they're underrepresented. You ready for dong picks before we get out of here? Turn it over to Live Before Lock.
Let's do it. I had mine. Mine had to rush it. I was thinking about this team and I just kind of scanned the ownership column and it seems chalky. It seems like an obvious guy to take. I'm sorry, but he's low owned. He's expensive. His name's Giancarlo Stanton. I love the power upside hitting cleanup for the Yankees here going up against Hyun-Jin Ryu. One of the leaders in my boards. The actual overall leader on my home run model is not the guy that I always take. And that would be Mr. Joey Gallo, lefty. Oh,
okay. I was going to try to guess and beat you to it because I have Salvador Perez at the top of mine, and I was just curious if you had it as well.
Salvi's been living near the top of my model. He is number 8 in my model.
Okay. Gallo's 5 for me. Stanton is my number 4. He is who I would have said because he was the single-digit ownership guy near the top. I'm going to round Renfroe up to 10. I'm going to round Judge up to 10. So I don't feel comfortable with this one, but I'm going to take it anyway. 3% owned Kyle Schwarber, lefty like on Ryan Yarbrough, my number 9 overall. Dead last in the model. Who do you have?
Well, Schwarber was 14 overall for me, so I like that one. Okay. Let's see.
And by the way, 302 likes. Shout out to the people watching.
Nice. I don't care about batting average, but in this category, I want to be over 300. I love it.
Exactly.
Bottom of my model is, I'm not sure if he's in the lineup. It's basically all Brewers at the bottom. So the absolute bottom is with a 1.45 in my model is Mr. Lorenzo Cain. If he's in the lineup, above him was Jace Peterson. Above him was Omar Narvaez. Not sure if any of them are in the lineup right now.
Cain is 9th from the bottom for me. Matt Duffy, my lowest ranked home run option for today.
Duffy's 4th from the bottom for me.
Okay. And my lowest ranked double-digit ownership guy is Hanser Alberto.
Hanser Alberto is also, he's 19th from the bottom for me.
Okay. He's number 8. So there we go. We made it to noon. Happy Labor Day, everybody. Enjoy your holiday. But first, stay right here. MLB Live Before Lock is next. Thank you to Terry for filling in. Thank you to Jock Market for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. I am going to go get some food. Adios.
Good idea.
It is the Awesemo MLB Live Before Lock, sponsored by Jock Market, and a little bit different of a Live Before Lock than usual for a couple of reasons. First of all, holiday, so I assume a lot of people are off from work. Not us, of course, but we are going to be doing the show also Live Before Lock in the afternoon on a Monday. And I'm doing Live Before Lock with Eric. When's the last time we did a show together, Live Before Lock?
Yeah, it's been a while. We've done a couple of different shows here and there for stuff getting ready for NFL season, but it's been a while for an MLB show. Great to be back with you. And yeah, I hope you're enjoying Labor Day.
Well, working, as are you, although probably not as much as you, because you're in Italy, and it seems like you're staying at a very nice place. I know it is nice because you told me right before. What are you, officiating a wedding or something?
I'm literally, yeah. So my best friend's getting married on Tuesday. And so the one request I had, hey, we got to figure out this internet thing immediately upon getting down here. It's obviously week one NFL, have a lot of things that we need to keep track of. And obviously looking forward to Thursday, looking forward to Sunday. Going to be a phenomenal week here at Awesemo. So make sure you're staying tuned for all of those goods. But my best friend's getting married tomorrow. We're in Positano, Italy, which is one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful place I've ever been in my entire life. The food is terrible. The scenery's terrible. Everything's awful.
Well, I hope the marriage works. I hope that you eating chalk was some sort of good omen before you left for the wedding. But that aside, we do have a baseball slate to talk about, and as Eric mentioned, also a lot of football content coming up on the channel. So all the more reason, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because we're going to having football content really running in regularly this week with week one of NFL about to start up. And already right off of that, we do have a super chat here from. Who is John Galt 420? Appreciate you guys. We appreciate you. We appreciate the super chat. But let's jump into this slate, Eric. And smaller 7-game slate on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Before we start talking about the pitchers, are there just kind of any overarching thoughts you have for this slate?
So this slate is very intriguing to me for a number of reasons. So one, I'm not able to play here from Italy. I was able to reserve lineups in Amsterdam yesterday, or what is it, 2 days ago now, because of the time difference and everything, and was able to play for Monday here. But I'm still able to get some sports bets in. So I'm going to be focused a little bit here on that on my end. But it's the very first show that I have ever done where I'm not playing lineups on the show. And I got to say, it feels good because I'm like, oh, I'm going to make all these strong stands. It's not my money. I'm going to just kind of just freewheel it no matter what happens. But then I started realizing that, probably not the best route to take. I'm here to help you guys. I'm completely focused on you guys in terms of trying to turn over some profit on this slate. I think it comes down to Chris Sale for me. I understand Tampa Bay is about as bad of a matchup as it humanly possibly gets. They are able to make their lineup whatever they need to up against splits. I specifically like targeting them up against righties. But against lefties here, I mean, Arozarena, Wander Franco, Nelson Cruz, Yandy Diaz, Jordan Luplow. I mean, you get Austin Meadows in the 7 hole. You get Brandon Lau out of the lineup here. I think it sets up pretty well still for Chris Sale from a K perspective. And sure, he could get obliterated in this spot. But it's hard for me not to have a ton of interest here in Chris Sale. And Brandon Woodruff, Sonny Gray pulling so much ownership, and I get it at their price points. I think on DK, I'd be willing to kind of ride with a little bit more of him. What do you think about him compared to the chalkier pitchers?
I still don't really know what to make of Chris Sale. My gut feeling is he's going to be very good moving forward, and he certainly looks under-owned. But we have a weird situation where if you look at our top pitchers tool, he's the most under-owned pitcher. If you look at our top stacks tool, the Rays are the most positive, are the most under-owned stack in both FanDuel and DraftKings. The top stacks tool is free to use today. So my feeling is it's a GPP spot with a lot of upside. The field isn't going heavily on either end. So I'm going to be pretty heavy on both sides. I'm going to hope that it's either going to be Chris Sale goes out and scores, 30 fantasy points and shuts down the Rays, or he kind of shows up and looks like he did last time, struggles, walks some hitters, gives up some hard contact, and gives up a bunch of runs. Obviously, there's a situation in between, but I'm hoping that we get one sort of the extreme outcome because I'm very high on Chris Sale, but I'm also pretty high on Rays stacks.
Would you be looking at him on FanDuel whatsoever? I mean, the pinch count issues have been not really. I think it's a little bit overblown. Would you have any interest going to FanDuel on him?
I mean, yes. I mean, the question is to what extent, right? We have him right now projected for
exactly.
He's projected for 4% ownership right now. We have a 10% chance to be the top overall scoring pitcher on FanDuel. I still prefer Zach Wheeler and Brandon Woodruff, but relative to ownership, these are guys in Wheeler, and I'll pull up like my exposures right now. I am fairly close to the field on Woodruff and Zach Wheeler. I have like nearly the exact same ownership. The Woodruff is slightly under on Wheeler, but nothing significant. So I have more exposure to those guys than Chris Sale, but just relative to ownership, I'm higher on Chris Sale than the field is, if that follows.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. That makes more sense for me. I mean, that's kind of what I would be looking at. 10-7 for him. It's a little bit of a different play over on FanDuel, one pitcher site. I'm not sure. The ownership always seems to level out quite a bit on this top end, but he's still 5% there, which seems a little egregious. I know he's the most expensive pitcher on the slate. That would kind of be the guy that I would be looking at. I can tell you one thing though, and I think we're both going to agree on this. The next dude on the board, Tariq Skubal, I got to be hitting eject in that spot. No.
What do you mean by hitting eject?
I can't exactly. If I had 150 lineups today, if I were playing 20 lineups today, I don't think I get to 20% of Tariq Skubal in any scenario.
I am, and here's why.
Okay,
but here's why also. So look at the other cheap pitching options, and in general, also I've been pretty high on Skubal from a fantasy perspective for most of the season. But look at the cheaper pricing tier on DraftKings and tell me, if you're not rostering Skubal for cheap, which pitcher do you want to be married to, and say like, okay, these are my guys.
I think Chris Bubich is probably an all right spot to be looking at. Targeting Baltimore, it's all right. Chris Bubich has been so bad here out of the gate. 463 expected slugging, 20.8% K percentage, walking dudes at a crazy clip. That's kind of the issue. But Baltimore, you get some of these righties in Severino, Mountcastle. Do we have, where's that Baltimore? We still don't have this Baltimore lineup. There's a number of ways. I mean, Jahmai Jones has been in there, Jorge Mateo. Looking at some of the K rates for some of these guys, I still think, Jahmai Jones, 36.1% K percentage, K to quite a bit at AAA. I think that would be a great upgrade for somebody like Bubich, and he's not really garnering any ownership whatsoever. He's a guy I know that Adam Scher has talked about a little bit on some of these slates as a possible source of salary relief. I think I might be willing to take some shots on him. Wouldn't get crazy or carried away. For me, it comes down to Skubal just has so much risk at that amount of ownership, and 7,800. It's not like you're getting such a discount. I did some crunches, and I'm kind of looking at the way that lineups are turning out. If I were on this slate a little bit more, Sonny Gray, I think for me is impossible. Him and Woodruff. I would still be getting to, 30+% of each of them. But Scooble, it just feels like I know Pittsburgh is a phenomenal matchup. I know it's a great spot to be. The K's are there in such a meaningful way, but it can get murdered on the other side of it too. It's just an opportunity cost thing. And looking at the top two pitchers tool, Drake Scooble, 24.2%, 39% ownership, probably a hard pass for me at that number.
Yeah, and while I get that to an extent, there's nobody else I really feel comfortable with. Like I have a few lineups with Bubich, but he's not somebody I want to roster a whole bunch of. I am getting to Orioles stacks as well, but I mean, some of these other guys, I don't feel. I mean, Zach Lothar, he sucks and he's probably not going deep into the game. Bryce Wilson, bad. Ryan Yarbrough pitching against the Red Sox. Trevor Williams, bad, doesn't strike guys out. Patrick Corbin, he sucks. And it's just kind of process of elimination where I go through these guys. Like if I'm not playing Tyreek Skubal for cheap, who am I playing? And that's just kind of what gets me to him by default. The one guy who the field is getting to at a decent amount that I am not getting to is going to be Justin Steele. I like the Cincinnati Reds a lot as a stack today. And Steele at 6K, I understand he's coming off a pretty solid start where he scored 18 fantasy points, but only one of two times the entire season he scored more than 10. But still, he pitched 5 innings. He had 3 strikeouts, 3 walks. He's cheap at 6K, but that's the guy where I'm really looking to differentiate on a pitcher pool. I'm just not really interested in Steele.
I would be much more interested in going to him than I would be going to Scooble, all things being considered. Looking at the K percentage for the Chicago Cubs up against righties this season, 27.1% leads all of Major League Baseball. It's only going to continue to climb here. We know all of the pieces that they've moved since. Then again, Javi Baez, a crazy K percentage, but still, I digress. I think the Cubbies, 88 WRC plus, I think that's even a little bit high for what we can expect from this lineup. And winds blowing in 6 miles.
He's pitching for the Cubs, not against them.
Oh, that's what I meant. Sorry. That's my fault. I'm looking at the 6 mile per hour blowing in here, going up against the Cincinnati Reds, looking at all of their splits specifically. They're 23.4%, middle of the road, 108 WRC plus. You get his Drupal Cabrera in there. It's such a weird thing to see here. Mike Moustakas has been terrible, I suppose. So there's that. But yeah, Justin Steele, he came off of that good start here. I think I would probably still get to more of him here looking at this lineup. Eugenio Suarez has not been the Eugenio Suarez of years past. I think it's something that he could probably get through. I'd be willing to get to a little bit more of him comparatively, but then again, the K percentage is just different. And I could see why you would probably go to Scooble in this spot. I just think I'd take the savings and find ways to get to Justin Steele. It's not that crazy amount of ownership. I mean, he's underneath 10%. I think I would be fine getting to a little bit there.
Yeah, and let me just refresh the top pitchers tool because at least, I mean, he's projected for nearly 20% ownership, Justin Steele, unless that's changed.
Oh, I saw underneath 10 in the last run.
19.
Oh, no, now he's up to 19. Okay, awesome. So FanDuel, he is at 5.3%. He's 5,800 on the FanDuel slate. I don't think you should probably be doing very much of that considering you have Woodruff, Wheeler, and Chris Sale on the top end. Sonny Gray, 9,200, another fantastic spot. Probably pulling a little bit too much ownership considering he's the cheapest of the grouping. More people look to be going that direction. That's when you want to be getting up to guys like Wheeler and Woodruff, but no problem kind of there on the FanDuel board looking at that. But Justin Steele, I think, would probably fit into some lineups. Maybe not somebody to go nuts on at 19%. I was just looking at 9% for his number and hadn't refreshed. So that is probably correct. You're probably right in being lesser there.
Yeah. And then, once again, just looking at his ownership, it's really high. I get it's high for Scuba also. But my point is, it's really just that I don't think I have an alternative. I mean, mixing and matching some of these other guys is fine, but they all suck. I don't want to play Zach Lothar, Bryce Wilson, Ryan Yarbrough, Trevor Williams, Patrick Corbin. Those kind of are what the alternatives are. And even somebody like Patrick Corbin, he's still picking up 6% ownership, right around in line with his top pitcher odds. So, I mean, we look at Tyreek Skubal currently projected for 35% ownership. He does have a 25% chance to be a top 2 pitcher. Actually, here's something else also kind of surprising. Tyreek Skubal today, our projections on DraftKings, 25.3% chance being one of the top 2 scoring pitchers on the slate. Zach Wheeler, 26.1. So the odds of these guys landing in the optimal lineup between Skubal and Zach Wheeler, and that's not even weighing for price, is about the same. Then you also consider he's that much cheaper. So what are you doing with? Well, I know what would you be doing with Zach
Theoretically,
if you weren't in Italy and were allowed to be playing DFS right now?
I think I would be. It's really hard. I'm actually just going to keep crunching as if I am playing this slate. I think that's the best way for me to do it. I was kind of toying with some stuff there, trying to see. Well, no, I'm not going to be able to do that, but. I think I would probably be underneath the field just because I think Woodruff and Sonny Gray is like impossible. I would be automatically going his direction. I had him circled as the main guy to talk about with his 321 expected slugging, 27.4% K percentage, 31.4% hard hit percentage, and getting this Cubs matchup that I was talking about earlier, 27.1% K percentage from the right side of the plate this year, highest K rate in baseball. It's such a good spot here for Sonny Gray. I would find it impossible for me not to be still on him well over the field, even at 9K. Gives me some more of those savings off of Woodruff, off of Wheeler, and I just feel like he's in such a good spot comparatively. The Phillies can be dangerous. Zach Wheeler, Milwaukee's going to have a number of lefties, and they have a number of lefties looking at this lineup here. And it just becomes a question of what do those savings get you? And I think it can get you to enough that I think Sonny Gray, all other things being equal, I would want way more of him.
Yeah, and I think that's totally reasonable looking at the ownership I have right now at pitcher. I have, at Woodruff and Sonny Gray, those are kind of guys at the top. Then it's Skubal and Chris Sale. And then I have Zach Wheeler behind all those guys. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of things with Zach Wheeler. Number one, second half of the season, he struggled a little bit. He hasn't pitched quite as well as he did in the first half of the season. And it's still a little hard for me to know what to make of him. I know that we're almost full way through the baseball season, but still I look at some of these guys like 27 starts, and it's like we've seen Zach Wheeler in the big leagues for 9 years now, and he's a totally different pitcher in the first half of this year than he was in previous years. And the second half of the season, we've seen him be a little bit closer to what he was in previous seasons, which is still a really good pitcher, but not quite the same strikeout stuff we've seen from him earlier in the season. So from a fantasy standpoint, these have been some of his recent results. This is going back to, so since the start of August, we'll say August 30 pitches against Washington. So 14 fantasy points, 17.49. That's obviously a very good start, but then 14.12, 22.12. The strikeout stuff just hasn't been quite the same for him on the whole over the last month. And that's definitely a little bit of a concern for me in my player pool, but I'm underweight to the field and I'm getting to Chris Sale, Skubal, Sonny Gray, and Brendan Woodruff all more. But I'm going to ask you now for FanDuel and DraftKings, if you were playing cash games, which pitchers would you be on?
I think it would be Sonny Gray would have to be on FanDuel. He's pulling the most ownership. I still think he's in the best spot, and he's 9,200. I don't have to worry about the pitch counts concerns. 10-7 Chris Sale, Brandon Woodruff, and Zach Wheeler. I think that they're more than adequate, but they're 10-5 and 10-2. That $1,000. I know FanDuel has softer pricing, but I still just believe that the spot is so good. Wind blowing in at Wrigley. All of these bats that just are AAA quality bats outside of Frank Schwindel, who's apparently God. We just learned that this entire month. That's ridiculous. But I'm just looking at this lineup and there's nothing on the back end. You get by Wisdom, you get by Schwindel. I'm pretty excited about rostering Sonny Gray. The Reds, one of my favorite bets on the board today too.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at these pitchers, it's kind of weird because I think there are a lot of guys to feel super confident in, but that's also why they're really popular. And then we're talking about trying to get contrarian a little bit with other cheaper options who aren't Skubal, and they just all kind of suck. I know we've got Mike Campbell in the YouTube chat is saying, hey, tell everybody to fade Skubal like he did last time. And last time against Oakland, that was a good spot to fade Skubal. I feel less good about fading him when he's pitching in Pittsburgh against the Pirates. How about this mid-range, though? We've got guys like Jameson Taillon, Hyun-Jin Ryu, obviously brutal matchups for them against the Yankees and the Blue Jays, respectively, pitching against each other. But do either of them stand out for you as ways to differentiate?
I want to believe in Taillon. I want to believe in this spot, but it's the Toronto Blue Jays. And it's the issue is they just don't strike out enough. 20.4% K percentage, second best in baseball in terms of avoiding strikeouts, 111 WRC plus, 194 ISO, which is just climbing up the board now third, tied with the Rays in Major League Baseball against right-handed pitching. I would probably find a different slate to do that. If this were like a 12 gamer and he was pulling 1%, I think I would be a little bit more interested going there. Which sounds almost counterintuitive, but I just think that finding the rest of the pitching board, it feels like it's getting so sketchy in some of these spots, and you're not getting any kind of a pronounced discount. I mean, he's 8,700 looking at him on FanDuel. He's 8,300 on DK. I know Scooble's picking more ownership here. I think I would be much more interested just because of the K percentage, and from a DFS angle, that's Tariq Scooble. He'll still get some Ks. We can rack him up double digits in any spot and still get lit up and won't matter. He elevates your floor a little bit there. I'm just saying I wouldn't get to the 35% he's at, but Jameson Taillon's still not a guy that I would want to try to make a thing against the Toronto Blue Jays. Same thing goes for Hyun-Jin Ryu. I think out of those two, if I were to go to the mid-range, I'd have more interest in Ryu. I think that there's probably more Ks available. Looking at this New York lineup with 34% K percentage, Joey Gallo, we've talked about the feast and famine of the Yankees. They definitely are going to have games where they're going to strike out a bunch, and it's going to come with the territory of a team that can absolutely bash a pitcher's face in too. But I would still maybe take some shots there if I were trying to get cute in the mid-range, but I'm crunching some lineups now. I don't think I would get there in any kind of a meaningful way above like 4 or 5% in a 150 max.
Yeah, and by the way, the Orioles released their lineup first game of the day. I want to be able to finalize these lineups. This is something, obviously, the benefits of Eric being overseas in Italy and by the way, also Eric, when Eric usually is, not only does Eric usually always play DFS, and Eric feels like he's obligated to play on every single site that's ever existed for DFS purposes. Yep. So we're usually doing the shows, and Eric's building lineups for like 9 different sites while we're doing the show, which to me is crazy. I could handle one site. Every once in a while I can play on FanDuel and DraftKings, but I usually have to pick and choose when I'm hosting it. So it's very difficult to do both. But any other pitchers here at all that you want to talk about? If anybody has questions, they could throw them in. But smaller slate, I kind of feel like we've hit on everybody at this point.
Yeah, and I think we should hit on everybody. I think it's easier to hit on everybody in this kind of spot. I loved your analysis earlier. Bryce Wilson sucks. Zach Lowther, bad, not going to pitch a lot. Or Patrick Corbin, terrible. Patrick Corbin pulling a little bit of ownership is pretty fascinating to me, even like 6.4%. People are trying to make him a thing. I would rather make that Bubic. I'm just throwing that out there. I would be making that stand. I would just flip-flop those ownerships in large field GPPs. I think that's one of the easiest things you can do if you're trying to take shots in the bottom end of the range. And these guys have a propensity to pop in spots, and they can get 12 if you don't have the entire top end range. It's basically an investment in saying Woodruff, Gray, Wheeler, and Sale, and put Scooble in there. Those 5, nobody, like two of the 5 aren't going to go for 30 plus and burn me. And you could get 12 or 15 from Bubic and still find a way into having a pretty premium lineup if it gets you to something more important. But yeah, I love that I don't have to be walking the tightrope today. I mean, I get to just kind of enjoy the ride, and I'm here to support you is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's somebody for me to talk to and ask questions to as I update lineups, and then I'm able to get those up. But we do have a question here in the YouTube chat. Here, Eric Johnson asked, no love for Lothar versus a chalky Kansas City team. Here's the issue with Lothar. He's made 5 appearances this year. He's pitched over 8 1/3 innings, and in those innings, 10.8 ERA, 9.21 expected ERA. I get that there's reason to think there's a little bit of leverage there just because of the ownership. But, when the most innings he's pitched all year in the big leagues was 2 1/3 innings, it's hard for me to think he's really going to go deep into the game. In his recent minor league outings, he's pitched a little bit longer. But still, I'm not sure how super stretched out he is. The deepest he's gone in the minor league has been 5 2/3. I think it's fairly likely we only see, like 2 or 3 innings out of Lothar.
Yeah, he pitched 3 on March 24th in preseason. So if we want to talk a little spring training action, he pitched 3 innings. So I'm just kind of trying to find anything that I can go to. He's been stretched out a little bit. I can't do it. 2 1/3 was the last one that I saw here. It just comes down to pitch count. I would rather take my shots on Justin Steele. I'd rather take my shots on, God forbid, Patrick Corbin, Chris Bubic. I think Lothar is basically the worst play on the slate. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I wouldn't go that far because nobody's playing him, right? I mean, a 1%, like there's never a point where a 1% owned Lothar is the worst play on the slate. In my opinion, the actual worst play on the slate is Justin Steele. In terms of a player who I think is bad, that's actually picking up a lot of ownership. Like, I don't think Justin Steele should be 20% owned. Lothar at 1%. Like, if somebody was to play him, we have him with a 2% chance being one of the top of being a top 2 scoring pitcher on the slate. So I think that Justin Steele is a worse play, but I know what you mean. Like projection wise, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, it's just for me, you'd have to basically get 6 Ks in 3 innings or 4 innings to be viable in this spot. I don't think that that's necessarily in the cards.
All right, so let's jump over to the offenses. But first, I have to mention today's show is sponsored by Jock Market. If you guys are not familiar with Jock Market, head to your app store, whatever phone you use, iPhone, Android, all on different devices. They don't have a website yet, but it's coming soon. Download the app, and if you're making your first deposit, use the promo code Awesemo and get up to a $50 bonus on that first deposit. Now, what is Jock Market? It's a different way to play daily fantasy sports. You don't have to worry about ownership. Don't have to worry about stacks, correlations, none of that. It's going to be basically like a stock market, but for athletes. So you bid on players before the slate starts in an IPO period. And then it's really fun. After the slate starts, there's a period where you could buy and sell players. If somebody starts off really hot, you think they're going to cool off, you could sell high. If somebody gets off to a slow start, you could buy low. So it's a totally different way to play DFS. It's really creative, and I recommend checking out. There's also free contests. So if you want to just dip your toes in the water, check out those. When you're ready to make a deposit, use the promo code Awesemo, get up to a $50 bonus on that first deposit. All right, let's jump over to the stacks. And let me just refresh this actually to make sure I'm looking at the correct ownership.
Yeah.
But I will mention.
Me too. I just got burned by it because it unorganized my entire list that I put together last time. So oopsie.
What changed in this? By the way, top stacks tool, free to use. This is my favorite piece of data that we have for building lineups over on Awesemo.com is the top stacks tool. That is free to use. But what is the change really significantly from the last time you looked at it?
Oh, so I mean, it was the Justin Steele. He went from 9%, which would have been half an hour ago, to 19%, and that's a different whole ball of wax or whatever you want to say. Looking at the top stacks tool, I don't think anything. This is not a real thing. I don't know. I don't know why people would want a ball of wax.
Try to like what would that even mean? That's a ball. That's a ball of wax. Like what is that? That's not.
It's a saying. It's a whole new ball of wax. I've heard that before. I promise it's a saying from somebody somewhere once upon a time. I don't know where I've heard it, but here we are. I'm looking at the top stacks tool. I don't think anything's changed for me on my opinions here. This is where I think the slate gets really, really fascinating, because how many times do you get positive leverage on the Yankees on a 7-gamer? I'm going to say just about never. And I know it's a product of the pitching being expensive, but that makes me very excited. If you're going to be playing Scooble, if you're going to be playing Steele, if you're going to be playing in your event, somebody on the bottom end here closer. I mean, Scooble is the guy I know that you're going more heavily invested in. So we'll just say him for argument's sake. How can you not love getting to the Yankees on this slate? I'm kind of sad that I'm not able to get in on under-owned Yankee Day because they just seem to never happen here. But some of the prices are starting to climb up here into more of a meaningful territory. Aaron Judge with 6Ks, 5.8K here now, 5.4K for Stanton. You have Sanchez, who just went completely nuts out of the 9-hole. Good times the other night. Didn't have any of them there. And then Gleyber Torres and Gardner and Urshela. I know it's harder to kind of include them, but how do you not love getting to the top end of the Yankees in this spot? Hyun-Jin Ryu is a very good pitcher, but I just got to figure out a way to get them, and I would just be playing them a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, whenever the Yankees are lower owned, this is, I don't know how many times I've said this about the New York Yankees, Toronto Blue Jays this year. It's been my stance on them basically since opening day when the Yankees were really popular. The Yankees are going to be a team that's, like 18, 20% owned on a sizable slate. I'm going to be underweight to them. When you get a slate like today where they're picking up 7% ownership, we have them with 10% top stack odds, they're going to be a priority to get to, especially against the left-hand pitcher who in Hyun-Jin Ryu has overall been good this year, but he's also been a little bit inconsistent. So I'm going to bring up some of his recent performances. By the way, Baltimore, get on your shit. Let's get a lineup here. I want to finalize these lineups. I don't want to be waiting.
I'll just relax here for a second. Oh, it feels great. This is nice.
Really, really the worst. It was like, can you imagine if Eric was here and he was in stateside and he hadn't been deported yet and he was playing and he was sweating out having to play in 9 different sites. But all right, these are the box scores over the last handful of games for Hyun-Jin Ryu. 28 fantasy points, -10, 9, 26, -3, 15. Very high variance pitcher, which is kind of weird. That's not what he's been in the past, but he's been all over the place, and somebody who's been that volatile against this Yankees lineup that's also going under-owned in tournaments. I mean, there's potential for a massive amount of upside for the Yankees. Obviously, a lot of power in the lineup. Guys like Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton absolutely crush left-handed pitching. So I agree with you. I think that is a priority team to get to. Not my favorite stack of the slate. Who do you think is my number one overall stack?
Oh, well, I was going to round out Hyun-Jin Ryu, and then I will absolutely answer that question. My biggest thing for him is that in 2020, when you're talking about him with the Dodgers, and part of it is a product of having Dodgers system and being in that ballpark and all of those good things, not having to deal with the AL East all the time, 29.2% hard hit percentage, 28.8% hard hit percentage. The last time that he was even over 32% in that regard was 2016, his first season in the big leagues when he was coming in relief. 2021, 40.4% hard hit percentage. So there is the capability. I don't know necessarily what it is. His expected ERA is up to 4.4. His ERA is only 3.92. I think he's been getting a little bit lucky, actually. So Hyun-Jin Ryu, I'm just saying all the signs point towards me being heavily invested in the Yankees today if I were to be playing. I got to think that just knowing you, knowing how you play MLB DFS, and I think you play the correct way, something tells me that you love Boston today.
No, Cincinnati.
Okay. Cincinnati love that too, because Justin Steele is popular, and there you go.
Yep. Also, so we already have the Cincinnati Reds today on both sites. We have them going under owned. So Cincinnati over on DK, 5% projected ownership share as a team, 8% chance to be a top stack. Over on FanDuel, we have Cincinnati, 5% projected ownership and same top stack odds. So one of the most positively leveraged teams on both slates, but then especially for DK where Justin Steele is going to be popular. I love the leverage we're getting here. That's always something in my process that's going to boost somebody. When we have a pitcher who's as crappy as Justin Steele is, that's projected for nearly 20% ownership, that makes the Reds all the much more of a priority for me. So that is my number one overall stack on the slate team that I'm going to have the most exposure to.
Okay, I would be just fine with that as well. I mean, Steele would be a product of the slate that I would be getting to some of him. I completely agree with you, though. I mean, Justin Steele's not going to be. He's been good so far, but we don't know necessarily what that is. I would be happy to be getting to some leverage stacks of them as well, and they're unowned, and there's crazy upside, especially in the bats of Castellanos, Tyler Stevens, and a catching option. Definitely like that play.
Yeah, and by the way, some individual hitters here that I'm getting to from the Reds, and still looking to update the final version of my lineups if we ever get the Baltimore Orioles coming. Maybe it'll just be a thing like, the NBA season. You get to the later part of the season, and somebody's listed as questionable to play and they're a bench player, and you find out whether they're playing or not like midway through the first quarter. I think that's what we can end up getting for the Orioles. The game starts like whoever bats, that's what their batting order is going to be. But let's hopefully get that soon. But Aristides Aquino, he's only projected for 1% ownership. Always love his power upside. And then obviously some of the better bats in the middle of the order also. Tyler Stevenson, who has catcher eligibility on DK. He's one of my favorite catcher plays on FanDuel. He's also really cheap. So he's a priority play for me. And then, obviously the big bats, guys like Jonathan India, Nick Castellanos, those are always going to be in play. But in terms of cheaper plays or guys that are lower owned, Aquino and Stevenson are guys that are standing out for me at the moment. Now I'm going to ask you, what was that you thought that I was going to like about the Boston Red Sox?
I mean, Ryan Yarbrough is fine, but I mean, this is a team outside of Taylor Motter. I had no idea that he was even back. The once upon a time Seattle Mariner, great salad on that guy for sure, but not even sure if he still has it anymore. I just think Boston in this spot, 81 degrees, 55% humidity. I think that there's just so much power with this team every single time. And people are so apprehensive to be rostering lefties in this spot. I think you get Schwarber and Devers at such a discount comparatively just because they're facing a lefty. And I love getting to them in these kind of spots. It always sticks out as like such a strong leverage spot. Rafael Devers, 2.3% ownership on him right now. Kyle Schwarber, 2.8% ownership. We're going from like 30% that this guy would be at 5,700 or what. He's just been crazy owned on a lot of these slates facing righties. And I know it's still Kyle Schwarber against lefties. We saw him at the beginning of the season capable of hitting lefties here as he's getting back from everything now. I would have no problem going to both lefties. I think it's one of the most underrepresented parts of playing MLB DFS is these lefty-lefty matchups. So I think getting to him 1% Alex Verdugo, I just think that they all seem to really stand out. Of course, Hunter Renfroe, JD Martinez pulling a lot of the ownership, but I think it's so easy to include a Devers, to include a Schwarber, and instantly just have no ownership going towards that team. And on a 7-gamer, give me that every single time in such a good game environment with this kind of lineup.
Yeah, they're definitely not all that, not massively popular. If you look at our top stacks tool, they're currently the number one positive leverage stack over on DK. over on FanDuel, they're the second most positively leveraged stack behind the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, let's talk about the Rays also, because they're rating out as, like I said, the number one leverage stack over on FanDuel, number two over on DK. The matchup against Chris Sale, obviously far from ideal if we get the peak version of Chris Sale, but he's been a little bit inconsistent so far. He's coming back from Tommy John surgery. We hadn't seen him pitch this year in about 2 years. I want to be on both sides of this. I talked about this a little bit when we talked about Chris Sale before. I don't know exactly what we're getting from him right now. My gut feeling is that we're getting a good version out of Chris Sale going forward, but I don't know that for sure. I'm just kind of guessing. And right now, we have not a lot of ownership going to Chris Sale. We have not a lot of ownership going to the Rays. I think it's a very volatile, high upside GPP spot. I'm going to be overweight to both sides, but I know you were really high on Chris Sale when we opened the show. So what are you going to be doing? What would you be doing with the Tampa Bay Rays?
I would be getting to them as well. And this is kind of the beauty of playing MLB DFS is you can get overweight pretty easily to both sides of it. Chris Sale's going underrepresented. And then Tampa Bay, nobody wants to be rostering them on the other side. And I would absolutely be over in both spots. I think that you're dead on with that as well. Chris Sale would be my priority for DraftKings purposes comparatively at his ownership. If he were to truly be under 12.3% of him, that kind of mitigates any risk that I would have for pitch count, for, what they want to be doing with him going forward. It's such an easy play for me. And I would be getting to absolutely tons of him. But all of that being said, we haven't seen him go beyond 6 innings as well. I absolutely love getting to him in this spot. I would love getting to the Rays in this spot. Nelson Cruz specifically, 5K. I mean, just sign up for him against any lefty, period.
What about anybody towards the bottom of the order? We've seen a pretty balanced attack from the Rays as of late, and there's been a lot of slates where the Rays will be popular, but we could find guys like Kevin Kiermaier or something like that at the bottom of the order. Is there anybody like that for you that stands out today?
Yeah, Austin Meadows. Again, we want to talk about the lefty-lefty thing, and Austin Meadows in the 7 hole. I have no problem plugging him in as the really unowned play of it. Again, we never have these kind of concerns when it's righty-righty for whatever reason. I guess I once upon a time had some kind of an internal bias against Henry Renfroe in San Diego with right on right for whatever reason. I'm not even sure. But I guess he just wasn't that good against them at that point in time. But he was mashing lefties and you just played him against every lefty. But I think looking at this lineup now, I'm just so inclined to find these left on left matchups and be overweight to them. So Austin Meadows jumps off the page for me on the season. 411 expected slugging here, a little bit lower up against lefties, but that's kind of a natural thing. I have no problem getting to him.
Yeah, I don't mind that either. Although with that said, some of the other slates where I'm prioritizing guys towards the bottom of the Rays lineup, they're popular. So they're going against Chris Sale and not picking up ownership. There's no spot where you really have to be too concerned about what anybody's playing any of these guys. But that aside, the Rays, another team that not necessarily my highest stack, but a team that's fairly easy to get overweight to the field to, and certainly something that I recommend doing. But now let's talk about some of these chalky stacks who might be a little bit overowned. The one that stands out in particular is the Kansas City Royals. We currently have them projected to be the chalkiest offense on DK by a very wide margin. 18.6% projected ownership for the Royals as a whole compared to 13% chance of being the top stack over on FanDuel. KC also the most negatively leveraged stack, same odds being a top stack, but 18.7% projected ownership. So all in all, we're looking at -5, -6 leverage scores, very poor in general in terms of odds of success in a GPP relative to ownership. How would you be handling KC looking at these numbers?
It's a tough kind of conversation. I mean, Baltimore, their bullpen has proved to be incompetent. I think that's the right word, just straight out incompetent. And you're looking Zach Lothar not going very deep into this game in whatever capacity, and he's not good to start off. So there's definitely that as well. I would have a tough time outside of Sal Perez getting to a ton. I mean, Sal Perez is on some kind of I'm not a huge hot streak guy, but I mean, it's kind of hard to say that the dude isn't probably the best catcher in baseball at the moment, or maybe just flat out period. 55.5% hard hit percentage, 554 expected slugging at a catcher position. If you're able to get up there and get that 6K number for him, at least he's 6K, and that should drive down some of the ownership, but it's not. 35.6%. God, it is such a hard spot to talk about, but I just think that it becomes an easy stay away, except for having some Sal Perez exposure because of how good he can be and how he can blow up the slate at the catcher position. But what would you be, or I guess, what are you doing with them? But I don't have to ask you rhetorically.
Yeah. So I have very minimal amount of Royals stacks. I have some of these guys mixed into lower owned stacks as one-offs, just because like, all right, if I'm playing a Rays stack, for instance, I don't have to be worried about the ownership in the rest of that lineup. So in that instance, playing Salvador Perez at catcher, I'm fine. I'm okay with that. Overall, on the whole, though, I'm underweight to all these guys. Salvador Perez is projected for 36% ownership on DK. It's hard for me to get to that kind of number on any one individual hitter. So Salvador Perez is my most rostered catcher on the slate right now. That means he's in 20% of my lineups. That's about half the amount the field has. So is he in my lineups? To an extent, if I was playing cash games, I would say yes, play Salvador Perez at catcher. But no, I'm not going to play to get overweight to the field on Salvador Perez. You have to have him in like 40% of your lineup. So that's not something I'm usually willing to do with any individual hitter. So a good spot for the Royals. Cash games, load up on them. For tournaments, though, I'm going to be underweight to the team as a whole, and then some of the individual hitter, or basically all the individual hitters, I'm also going to be underweight to. But is there any way you look at this team and you think there's a sensible way to reduce the ownership share?
I'm going through that right now here in some of these builds. I would be removing a guy so Olivares. This is just one guy that sticks out to me big time. Going through his for the season, I mean, he's hitting the ball into the ground. He kind of has that Yelich-ish type. Him and Nicky Lopez, both 3-degree launch angle, 6.7-degree launch angle. And obviously you're just hoping that they can speed it out and get on base here because both of them very, very fast. But I just don't love them in this spot whatsoever. The 2-hole and the 4-hole hitter. I think that finding ways to possibly not be as much on them. Let me see. It's just been a little slow here at the moment. Hitters here. I've got Sal Perez obviously being the guy. Whit Merrifield would be okay as well, but immediately it kind of falls off a little bit of a cliff here. I think Olivares is the first guy I would just be much lower to the field then. I think cash games, he makes sense. He's cheap, $3K. Michael Taylor, 2,600, also pulling 16% ownership. I would be more inclined to get to more Taylor, I think, than Olivares, just looking at what Michael Taylor, we knew exactly what to expect there a little bit. I'm just not a huge fan of getting to like a 20% dude in the 4-hole without a bunch of power on DraftKings. FanDuel maybe a little bit more when you're stacking them up. 4-man's more prevalent, but I would be lesser on him. I would be lesser on pretty much everybody in this lineup. And Sal Perez, I just ran my stuff as well, 22%. So I think we're right on the same wavelength there.
By the way, we finally got the Orioles lineup. So it took a second before we got it.
Was it everything you were hoping for it to be?
Yeah, well, they didn't find Babe Ruth in AAA or anything like that. But let's see. Let me pull up. I just saw News God post it in.
I got it here now. So we've got Cedric Mullins, Ryan Mountcastle, Austin Hayes, Santander, Mateo, McKenna, and then Jahmai Jones. So you got more Ks in there for good old Boobich, Kelvin Gutierrez, and Austin Wins batting ninth.
It's a pretty shitty lineup. I mean, not that I was expecting a good lineup because I might get to a little more Boobich now.
I think you have to. I mean, Jahmai Jones, 36.1%. The one that's fast. I mean, you get Ryan McKenna in the 6-hole there. You face him twice as well. 35.6%. Mateo 27.4%. Mountcastle 26.7%. I mean, the really only detractor of that entire lineup is batting ninth. Austin Wins, who ended up sneaking in that lineup here today. He has a pretty low K percentage. Let me find that here for him. 21.1% K percentage on the season. I really like this spot a little bit more than what the field would be. I would be getting to around 10% Boobich now. Let me see what I would get to. Yeah, I'm going to plug that in. I would definitely be getting to more Boobich now.
Yeah, it's certainly, and obviously there was no situation to be like, oh, look how good the Orioles lineup is. But this is, even by their standards, especially bad. So
yeah, no Mancini.
Boobich. Yeah, so Boobich is somebody who I'm going to be trying to get to. A little bit of him now, and just once we get the Orioles lineup updated in Fantasy Crunch, I could run my lineups again and figure out where I'm at. But yeah, probably somewhere around 10% is something that would probably make sense. And we do have a super chat here from Charlie Reinhardt Jones. Any love for a min price Kevin S? Kevin S from the YouTube chat is unfortunately not available on the slate today because we don't know. Like if he was starting in the minor leagues, and I don't know how old Kevin is, maybe he's I don't know, let's say 30 around there, late 20s, early 30s, just based on our YouTube demographics. If he was pitching against in the minor league the Little League World Series, no, it would still be no at min price. So no, I'm not getting to him min price.
Got him. Kevin Stadler, good times.
Where were we? Orioles lineup, Chris Bubich. That really
you have no idea what we're talking about, do you?
No, I have absolutely no clue what we're talking
This is fantastic. Honestly, you're just digging. Hang on. Just grab that shovel. Just keep on digging. This is good. Kevin Stadler.
I don't know what I'm digging.
So there's this recurring joke. If you watched other shows, Greg Ehrenberg, you would absolutely know. Kevin Stadler, he is a staple of the deeper dive of the Live Before Rock show.
That was what I mentioned. I said that if Kevin was pitching in the Little League World Series at min price, I still wouldn't roster him.
All right, Jordan and I had the same thought, so at least I don't feel so bad about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm confused. I thought there was something I'm missing, but I responded to it. I thought reasonably.
Okay, yeah, no, you did.
I said if Kevin S from YouTube chat was on the slate pitching in the Little League World Series, I still wouldn't play him. But I thought there was
he's
something
actually
else
asking a question though. Kevin Smith, third base.
Oh, okay.
It's actually a guy, Kevin Smith, 2K he's 2K on DK. Sure, involve him in your stacks. If you're stacking up Toronto, that is way too good.
This was a serious question. Now we caught that. Both of us.
Yeah, you and me, bud. You and me. Good to be back. Good to be back.
All right, so let's see. I'm refreshing. I'm rewriting my lineups right now for the Orioles lineup, and then I'll see if I'm getting to him at all. But do you have an answer to that?
I would absolutely at 2K. If I were stacking up Toronto, I have no problem getting to him here. His fan graphs again. I'm just so sensitive to making sure my internet is like flying. It's fantastic. So I'm very happy with today. I think Jordan Klein's happy with me as well, but Kevin Smith, I would be getting to him for sure in stacks. I would have no problem with it. Looking at his AAA numbers. Yeah, see, they're just not even coming up for me. That's good times, but I would be getting to a little bit. He's actually one of the he's 8.1%. So he's kind of like middle of the road in terms of ownership. He's a little bit higher on than I expected, but he's 2K. I never have any issue if somebody's underneath 10% at 2K. Yeah, he's batting ninth, but I think that's still an all right spot to be at.
Listen, I'm overweight to Toronto Blue Jays stacks. He's in about 10% of my lineups right now. If you're playing cash games, I would certainly consider him if you need salary saving options. Kevin S, I'd play him. If it's Kevin S from YouTube chat, don't play him.
Fair. Done. Got it.
All right. And by the way, yes, that was a real question. We apologize. First of all, for Eric was not listening to me when I answered, and then still doubled down and said I answered wrong. We were both wrong anyway. But Kevin S, yes, we
I caught it.
Kevin Smith today.
I caught it.
Abby Schreier is asking. He has Lane Thomas in 1,000% of his lineups on FanDuel. Is that bad? So what does that mean? You played him in every roster spot. Yeah, 100. I mean, it depends how many lineups you're playing. If you have Lane Thomas in every single one of your lineups, and I assume that's like the all day slate, then, no, that could just be just the early slate with the Nationals. It's a lot more Lane Thomas than I have. I'll say that much.
Yeah, Lane Thomas, 1,000%. First of all, you cheated, so that's bad. That's a lot. So I'm throwing it out there. Looking here, yeah, 2.3K, whatever. Wouldn't be that enthusiastic to get to 100%, but if you made one lineup, I can understand how that would happen.
Yeah, he's in 6% of my lineups. That's overweight to the field. Once again, if you're playing 2-3 lineups and you just have him in all of them, that's fine. But if you're playing like 20, 30 lineups plus and he's in 100% of them, that's a little problematic to me. But yeah, that aside though, yeah, I don't have an issue playing him in general, but anyway, we could move on. I'm kind of getting lost in the YouTube chat now, reading some of this stuff. And also Dexter Pope, Greg needs some sun. Yeah, I don't go out anywhere. I don't go out anywhere. I sit here. I've got shades in my office. I don't even need that kind of sunlight. And I'm not fancy like Eric, where I'm going on vacation to Italy or anything.
Yeah, that's me. I'm the fancy guy for sure. What would it take to get you to Italy? I feel like that would be a difficult ask. Oh, you have been to Italy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you are a cultured individual. You'll go out and about. You just won't come to LA to hang out with us. That's what it is.
No, but that doesn't have anything to do with LA. That's just a you thing.
Oh, wow. That was
but
shot to the
no,
heart. You're to blame.
when I was in college, I studied abroad in Italy and did very, very poor in my classes there. Did absolutely no work, no studying. It was just going out and partying and trying to meet girls. Like there was no amount of studying or doing work. But by the way, I'm trying to force myself to Chris Bubich as I'm talking. We're running my lineups. I'm finding it a little hard to get to him just because I don't need salary savings on this slate.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in some of my lineups, but I only have him 6% right now. I'm trying to boost him up to get more, but let's refresh some of the ownership now and see what's going on with these offenses and who's popping up as under-owned or under-owned at this point in time. The New York Mets have really come up in ownership now. So we have the Mets currently projected on DK for 14.7% ownership, 10.3% chance to be a top stack. They were a team where earlier in the day was also a little bit negatively leveraged, but now really to a big extent that they're getting overowned. So the New York Mets, what do you make of all the ownership going to them?
I mean, this is like recency bias extraordinaire, isn't it? Just they went off yesterday and now we move on with our day and like, oh, they're going to do it again today. These are the great kind of slates to have where you get people on a holiday, maybe not paying as much attention, or they just played yesterday and they won because they played the Mets at low ownership and they're coming back to them and playing them again. Or, they're a New York team. I don't know, whatever the reasoning is. I get that there's a number of ways to be able to play them and reduce some of the ownership. Somebody said earlier in the YouTube chat, Kevin Pillar is on fire. I'm not going to be like looking at Kevin Pillar as somebody that I'm going to be riding the hot streak of at any point from now until forever. But I get if you wanted to get to some of these Mets, it's just so hard to get to like a guy like VR, 25% on DK, Javi Baez, 25% on DK. Finding some of these other dudes, but they're all pulling ownership outside of McNeil, who has been bad, no question about it. I would just kind of find other places to go on this slate. There's such low ownership going towards Toronto, the Yankees. We talked about the Rays and the Red Sox. I really love the Red Sox. You liked getting to a little bit of Rays. You were in love with getting to the Cincinnati Reds, I believe was your favorite stack on the board. I totally understand if you wanted to get to some of these Mets. It's just so hard to find a way to usefully reduce the ownership or it basically caps your upside just reducing some of that ownership. So I would be inclined to be at least half of it, maybe even a little less of the field at that current ownership. And I would just move on with my day.
Yeah, I think that's all reasonable. It's exactly what I did also. And, since we have similar process and we used a lot of the same tools on Awesemo.com, I ask you a lot of questions. I kind of know what the answer is going to be already, but, people watching don't necessarily know what each of us are thinking. But Eric and I, even though we don't see each other in person, we've got that mental connection, kind of like twins, where we know what are each other's thought processes. We can go through the top props tool, look at some of those bets. But before we do that, I want to ask you any other offenses here that you want to talk about.
I think Washington is the one offense we haven't talked about. And this just comes down to me every single slate by default, finding a way to play more Soto and more Josh Bell in the field. It's just treated me so well throughout the course of this season. Two reliable plays to just constantly find both underneath 12% ownership, both going up against Trevor Williams here in this spot. They're just fantastic hitters in a lineup of not fantastic hitters. I think it sticks out so meaningfully to go to them up against Trevor Williams in this spot. Looking at the game environment, it's 82 degrees. You get these afternoon games. I really like getting to both of them. So I'll throw them in, and I think you can 5-man it up. Carter Kieboom, Alex Avila in there catching. He's flat 2K. That would be somebody I would be very interested in getting to where I'd play today. Your boy Lane Thomas here earlier from the chat over on FanDuel. Again, those are all FanDuel numbers that I'm listing off there, but Alex Avila 3.2K still is doable there on DK. Juan Soto 6.2K over there. I think that just constantly keeps his ownership a little bit lower. One of my favorite one-offs to get to on a daily basis.
By the way, I want to answer this really quick. I answered them in the YouTube chat, but since we're running out of time here, Art Piffels asked just one DK, Woodruff or Wheeler to pair with Gray. I prefer Woodruff today. I assume the same for you.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, so I'm going to pull up the top props tool now. We'll go over some of the top bets of the day. We'll also do some home run picks. We do home run picks from the prop model. We'll also do home run picks, just our who we think is going to homer. And first off the bat, Eric, the number one bet of the day for strikeout prop, Tyreek Skubal over 5.5. That is a 71% expected win rate, 36% expected ROI. I know earlier in the day you were a little lower on Skubal than me, but it wasn't from a standpoint of that you think he's a bad play points per dollar. It was just that you thought he was picking up too much ownership. But what do you make of the Skubal over 5.5 strikeouts?
Yeah, my concerns are the 500 expected slugging. It's 45% hard hit percentage. It's going in the air 15.5 degree launch angle, but 26.4% K percentage, and he limits walks. That is a great combination to see in a pitcher with strikeout ability. If guys are hitting pitches, at least he's not having like massively long at bats. If he has the walk rate down there, not a guy who's walking guys and unnecessarily throwing at least 4 pitches in that regard with 4 balls to put them on base and giving free passes. I really think that is probably a fair number to be going to the over on. 5.5, just too low. I still think I would be lower for DFS purposes, but from a sports betting perspective, I think I'm actually going to play that in right now. So I love how now I'm exposed to Trevor or to Rick Skubal after all of the bashing that I did there.
Yep. Hey, that's all I wanted to do is I wanted to lead you down a path where you say you don't like Skubal and then you bet on him by the time the show is over. So mission accomplished. Now, the next best bet from a props perspective for the early slate, and a pitcher who we didn't like very much, Patrick Corbin, under 5.5 strikeouts. That also has an expected ROA of 28%. We talked about the matchup against the Mets, how popular the Mets are today. I certainly think on paper it's a good matchup for New York. It's a team that I'm stacking just not as much as the field because I think they're going a little bit overowned. But as bad as Patrick Corbin's been this year, 5.5 strikeouts seems like a pretty lofty prop.
Yeah, let's talk about my 2 bets. My 2 favorite bets on the board today, the 2 that I bet this morning. And I think that it's only gotten better from our player props tool from when I looked at it earlier today. Sonny Gray sitting there at 27% expected ROI, the over there, and then Patrick Corbin, the under on 5.5. The fact that they both are listed with 5.5 is so egregious that I don't have words for it. One should be 6.5, one should be 4.5. And you get this kind of a difference here. It becomes an easy over there for Sonny Gray. It becomes an easy under for Patrick Corbin for me. I mean, what are they looking at? Are they looking at 2016 data for Patrick Corbin to be facing the Mets? And I know that you can get some Ks in that lineup, but I just don't see why that number is that high.
No, I totally agree. And also, if anybody has questions in Slack chat, fire them in right before the slate starts because I'm also looking for that on my phone while I'm talking to Eric, multitasking right here. In case anybody ever wonders why I'm not looking right at the camera, it's a couple things. Number one, where I can actually see Eric is not in front of me. It's over here. I have to look. Number two, if I want to look for questions, I have to look at my phone and look down a little bit. But Patrick Corbin, under, I totally agree. Tyreek Skubal, also the over I like. And then Sonny Gray, like you mentioned there, I think that's a very solid bet. Also one that is a 27% expected ROI in our betting model. It's a positive matchup for him. We know how bad the Cubs are, and 5.5 for Sonny Gray. He's been a little bit inconsistent this year, but that's not much of a concern for me against the Cubs because they've been consistent and it's just consistently bad.
Yeah, he's still so good though on the entire year. If you're just pulling the year up as a whole here, 31.4% hard hit percentage, 27.4% K percentage. I brought up the 27.2% K percentage. Cubbies leading up against right-handed pitching. It's just such a smash on the over there, and it's such an easy under for Patrick Corbin. Again, I'm kind of shocked by both those numbers. Find a way to get invested in both.
And yeah, totally agree with that.
And also, if you need to update your lineups here, I can go on a little tangent here for 2 minutes and kind of summarize the slate.
No,
you want to get everything in?
I'm all set and updated. I'm just looking through Slack to see if there's any questions we missed.
Okay, perfect.
So we are good, but let's do some home run picks. And before I look at the prop betting model, who's your home run pick for the early slate, Eric? I'll give mine. Then we'll do the home run props and we'll close out the show.
All right. So, I mean, my guy every single time, Juan Soto. Hard for me not to love getting to him here. He's under 12% on a 7-gamer. The amount of upside is immense. I absolutely love getting to him on any slate where I think he's just underrepresented still. Both him and Josh Bell. I'll give you a 2-fer. I'm just seeing both of them going yard on Trevor Williams today.
Oh, wow. 2-fer. And by the way, one that's also a stack in there. So
hang on. I'm going to call that they hit back-to-back.
That seems like a straight. Now I think you're going too far. It's like eating the chalk to try to literally to try to gain favor when you're going above and beyond when you don't have to. But all right, you're going to be incorrect. But if that hits, I mean, good for you. That would certainly be that'd be a massive feather in the cap. I'm going with Randy Arozarena matchup against Chris Sale. Obviously, on paper, Chris Sale is not the number one pitcher we'd be picking on, but the Tampa Bay Rays as an individual offense is a team that we've talked about is going under-owned in our top stacks model. Chris Sale, there's been a little bit of inconsistency so far coming back. So Randy Arozarena, who we do have with a 15% chance to hit a home run in our player prop tool, is also a hitter that I'm pretty overweight to as an individual. So to me, I'm going with Arozarena. Now let's look at our player prop tool for home runs. And by the way, the number one guy for the early slate is somebody you mentioned as a pick before, Kyle Schwarber, plus 400 to homer. And we have one with a 25% chance to homer. So 23% expected ROI for Kyle Schwarber at plus 400, 4-1. That is the number one bet in our player prop tool for home runs. What do you make of him?
Absolutely love it. If I were playing this slate, I mean, I would be so overweight to him in Devers. It's really not funny. Boston is my favorite. I mean, they're not even contrarian necessarily, but I mean, they're definitely underrepresented. I would be getting to a ton of Boston on this slate. That's what I got in a lot of my mocks here. The ownership's come up a little bit as we've been on the show. Now it's to 2.1%, not as highly leveraged as what they were before. Cincinnati, man, they're still the most leveraged stack. That's pretty interesting to see here on the top stacks tool. But I would just play all the Kyle Schwarber.
All right, that is going to do it for us today. Everybody, enjoy your Labor Day. I hope you guys are all off from work. Unlike Eric and I hope Eric is enjoying his time in Italy. But most importantly, let's make some money. Good luck today, guys.